All right, what's up, chat? Normally I wouldn't go live on a Sunday, but somebody said something in the comments section that really just changed everything for me, you know? It wasn't people calling me gay. It wasn't people supporting Hitler in my comments section. That's not what caused a moment of realization. Somebody said I think when I made a video about Ye doing the pro-Hitler song, somebody was like, this is the first time I've clicked on one of your videos in weeks. It's about time you started covering cultural stuff instead of just what Trump does 24/7. And I said, you know what? My nigga, you spitting fat. I don't know who it was. I don't know who you are. But you're right. You're right. You're so right. And over the past few days, I've been deep diving into Alex O'Connor. I've been getting back into the Richard Dawkins stuff. He hasn't aged a day since I last watched him. The last time I watched Dawkins consistently was 2012, 2013, maybe. Yeah, man has not aged a day. So, I think I'm going to start taking a little bit more interest in cultural and philosophical conversations because they just tend to hold an audience a lot better. And it's just more fun. You know what I mean? Like, it's just more enjoyable. So that's just what we're going to do. So I was chilling in the crib and I was just sifting through YouTube, and I saw like the Whatever podcast had a debate, and I tuned into their podcast. And it was NotSoErudite debating this guy by the name of Jay Dyer. And this was a really bad debate. Like, this was like I'm sitting there, I'm like, bro, who is the female in this conversation? Is it NotSoErudite or is it Jay Dyer? Like, this got really bad halfway through. Part of me doesn't even want to react to this shit because it wasn't even like, this wasn't even a productive discussion. It was more so like Jay Dyer just being like difficult for no fucking reason. But we're going to just react to it to have the conversation for the sake of having a conversation. Somebody said you had Hitler sympathizers in your chat. Not chat. I think if I said chat, I'm wrong. I did a video a few days ago reacting to Kanye's new song called Heil Hitler. And dude, I mean, the amount of people who were in support of the song is crazy. I mean, I had blacks, Hispanics, whites flooding the comment section trying to explain to me that I just don't understand the splendor and glory of Adolf. So, yeah, I had, not the best week in terms of that. I mean, like, I was hoping that video would attract normal people, but it is what it is. So we're gonna stick to it. We're gonna stay to it. We're gonna stay down. We're gonna watch this. We're gonna react to it. So let's sit tight.
Joined today by Jay Dyer. He's an author, comedian. He's the writer for the Sam Hyde Show and host of the Alex Jones Show TV.
Bro, how did I didn't even know this dude was involved in that. Now that explains so much of this conversation. That explains so much of why this went the way it did. See, this is why you need to watch shit from the beginning. That explains so much of why this shit went left.
TV. He has a bachelor's degree in philosophy. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
just making sure. Just making sure Google is correct on that. He's a political and social commentator. Also joining us today is Kyla, or as she goes online, NotSoErudite. She has an undergraduate in psychology and a graduate diploma in psychometrics. She's a content creator, streamer, and is a political and social commentator. The topic of today's, I'm still sick, guys. I'm getting over my illness, so my brain's operating at 10%. The topic of today's debate is feminism. You will each have a 5-minute opening statement, up to a 5-minute opening statement. The rest of the show is going to be open conversation. with a few breaks for audience messages. At the end, you will each have up to a 5-minute closing statement. And Jay, we're going to have you give your opening statement first. Go ahead. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Yeah, so I take the position that feminism is absolutely destructive to society. The only healthy society that we can have is a patriarchal society. If you look at the history of the world, history of civilizations, we notice that the natural formation, the natural structure that all societies, almost across the board, maybe a few tribal societies have had a matriarchy, but most societies fall into some form of natural hierarchy. Hierarchy is found in nature. We see it in the animal kingdom. We see it in the manimal kingdom that we inhabit. And when we look through history, we find certain civilizations have flourished, particularly with a worldview or philosophy that gives it its social cohesion. The longest running civilization in history, the most successful, the most prosperous, was Byzantium. Byzantium was an Orthodox Christian imperium dating back to the time of Constantine all the way up into the 1400s, when it fell to Islam due to liberalization, due to forms of modernization, certain economic open borders policy, shall we say, that led to the decline of Byzantium. So even in the most successful civilization in history, in Byzantium, we begin to notice that the liberalization of that society is what led to its decline and its eventual collapse, and even falling to Islam. If we fast forward to modernity, we look at women's rights for the idea of the first wave of feminism. Feminism finds its origins in French revolutionary philosophy, which led to the first wave, I should say. French revolutionary philosophy with Mary Wollstonecraft and others posited the idea of absolute equality in society based around the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity, all which were revolutionary at the time and sought to overthrow not just the church and not just the state or the monarchy or a patriarchal society, but all society, all areas of life had to be revolutionized. Since that time, we've had second wave feminism, we've had third wave feminism. Third wave feminism, interestingly, which not many people know, was actually funded by very wealthy, powerful oligarchical elites. In fact, in the Rockefellers' authorized biography, there's an entire chapter on Abby Rockefeller's funding of third wave feminism and Cell 16, which is the most radical form of this. This is really what prepared the way for the absolute insane degeneracy that we see in today's society. Western civilization, in other words, could not have gotten to the point that we're at had we not had first, second, and third wave feminism preparing the way for the absolute and total revolution against all natural order, all biological order, and the notion of patriarchy itself. In fact, many of the famous feminists over the last several decades have openly said that in order to destroy Western civilization, they would have to destroy the masculine archetype, the patriarch. That is, God the Father had to be destroyed to make way for the rise of the goddess, etc. All the various things that we see attending to or accompanying the revolution that is feminism. If you look on my wall on X right now, you'll notice at the very top is an interview the famous director Aaron Russo did with a friend of mine, Alex Jones, and in that interview they discuss Aaron Russo's interview with Nick Rockefeller. And Nick Rockefeller said that the greatest tool to revolutionize and control society was feminism. Modern feminism changed the landscape of getting women out of the house into the workforce, quote, so that they could be taxed and that there would be less children, less families. So we have from one of the key elites from the Rockefeller family admitting that the purpose of this was to change society, reduce population, tie it into neoliberal economics, taxation on a mass scale for the population, and thus it has been an absolute disaster. And it has nothing to do with equality. It has to do with control. It has to do with social control. It's dystopian. It has to do with social dystopian control, putting us into a utilitarian technocratic society. And I would say that this is all an attempt, admittedly, if you go back to people like early feminists like Wollstonecraft or others throughout history, Alexander Kollontai of the Bolshevik Revolution, they all speak about this as intimately tied into not just sexual revolution, but the overthrow of masculinity, ultimately the overthrow of the idea of God the Father, the ultimate patriarch. And that's where we are today, is in a society that has adopted revolutionary philosophy that is ultimately anti-male, anti-biology, anti-reality, because they all go together. In other words, feminism cannot be divorced from the revolution against biology, the revolution against masculinity, the revolution against every area of life that is healthy, wholesome, and based around patriarchy.
All right, thank you for that, Jay. Kyla, would you like to give your opening statement now?
Sure. Mine isn't going to be nearly as long, but that was really interesting. I basically would grant you lots of that stuff. I would essentially argue that feminism is not only a necessity, it's unavoidable. I think that's where society tends to go. I think women joining the workforce, while there's lots of cons with it, one of the biggest pros is the massive boost of GDP and just the competitiveness of every nation that includes women. And overall, I think feminism is broadly good for society, but I am sure that I would be happy to talk with you about a number of areas that I think have been harmful for society. I think feminism has been co-opted and often twisted. I think particularly in the third wave, we saw this by what I would call gender opportunists. And so when I think about feminism, I'm more interested in a feminism that is centralized around empowering women and promoting femininity. I think when you talk about egalitarianism, I think it's a really interesting concept, but I think we need to be precise in what we talk about. So I guess to open, I'd maybe start with a question. With your philosophy background, I'm sure you're familiar with Heidegger's concept of chatter.
No.
Okay, so Heidegger is an interesting philosopher from the 40s, but he has this idea of chatter that I think is really interesting for discussion, which is essentially how a lot of times when people have like philosophical and idea wrestling conversations, they use the same word, but they have different meanings for those words, and so then the whole conversation is just essentially garbage. That's what he calls like idle chatter. And so I'm curious if what you'd be willing to do for this conversation is if we could make sure that we agree on what we mean by certain words, so that we can actually talk about the ideas underneath them and hopefully come to a better understanding of everything.
What are the words you would like specified?
Probably for this conversation, we should talk about patriarchy and feminism. Those seem like the most obvious things to define. And then after that, just if we come to a word that we keep both using, it would probably just be useful to define it and make sure that we agree to what we're talking about, if that works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you like to start with your definitions and then Jay can give his?
Sure. So, I'm curious. So, patriarchy, I would define it as a hierarchical structure where men monopolize soft and hard power.
I think that they have authority. I wouldn't say it's a monopoly on power, because women can have a degree of influence and power in society, but it's under the headship of a man. So, for example, a job, right? As an example, Proverbs 31 talks about women being able to work, but it's sort of under the purview of the husband. So it's not independence, it's not doing their own thing, it's a family unit working together. So there's roles.
Sure. So when we're thinking about like a job, so when I think about a monopoly of hard and soft power, in my mind I'm thinking law, like kind of like men are mostly monopolizing positions in law, but also soft power like media and kind of able to kind of set the tone culturally as well. So they kind of have these areas of power mostly fully occupied by men, particularly systems where men force it to be the case that it's only men in those positions.
Yeah,
Do you feel like that's
monopoly is a difficult term because it suggests totality, and again, there can be a shared situation here that's not a total monopoly.
I feel like this is where the bullshit begins. Like, I feel like what you're advocating for is a monopoly, though. Like, just because a woman can participate in something at the, under the rulership or under the review or purview or, oversight of a man does not all of a sudden remove the monopoly. Like, if I'm your employee, but you have the power to fire me at will, if you control law, if you control media, if you control the military, if you are the only group represented in every position of power, you have a monopoly on power. The end. Like, if the other group has zero representation, zero ability to determine their own fate, zero ability to actually pass legislation or to represent the nation federally abroad or anything of the sort, you have a monopoly on power. I don't this is where the game the bullshit begins of playing word games, and it's not really a monopoly and stuff like that. Patriarchy as red pillars, promote it, is far beyond what feminists today describe it as, which is maybe a disproportionate representation of men in positions of power, cultural expectations set by men, things of that nature. What red pillars advocate for is the complete and total abolition of female presence in positions of power. No more female judges, no more female lawyers. Female teachers need to have their curriculums and plans reviewed by men. No female senators, no female representatives in the House, no female this, that's what they want. Is they want women to have zero power in society, which would be a male monopoly on power. And I think this is kind of like how white nationalists debate is they don't explicitly and clearly define what they want. It's word games. It's just, this is the beginning of the bullshit.
But fine, I'll go with it. It's fine.
Sure. We can say a soft monopoly or something like that. Okay. But essentially, a hierarchical structure where men tend to mostly occupy positions of power.
Sure.
Okay. Feminism, I define it as the empowerment of women and promotion of femininity. Do you agree with that, or do you have a very different definition?
I think of it as something necessarily tied to revolution, and I think when you say the word empowerment, it's also ambiguous because that could be a lot of things in different contexts. I don't know what you think empowerment is.
Okay, so by empowerment, what I mean is typically going to be, I'm a very big freedom of opportunity person, liberal, guilty as charged. So empowerment would be eroding any obstacles to disadvantages or inabilities to take opportunities other people would have. That would be one way of empowering someone.
So, for example, there's a TED Talk about 10 years ago, and one of the ladies who was a diehard sort of CEO out of the academic world, she went into academia and became a CEO. She was bragging that most CEOs now, this was again about 10 years ago, are now women. That we're reaching some tipping point. There's a large majority of women that are now CEOs. Do you think that's good? Is that fair? Because I would see that as a revolution against male authority.
I see it. I am very dubious of her claim. B, I see it as neutral. I don't really care who trickles up to the top, so long as the people who trickle to the top did so because there was free opportunity to do so, right? So in our society, I'm sure here's something we probably agree on. Most of the positions of power in our society are occupied by men because men tend to be more extreme. They're just more extreme in bell curve, genetically, and they don't often take time away from work with kids, so they have a little bit more time to dedicate. So we see at the highest levels of trickling to the top, men typically occupy those roles. I'm sure you and I would agree.
Yeah, but when you say extreme, again, it's a very ambiguous term. Extreme in their views, extreme on the bell curve.
Sorry, I meant genetically. So because of the Y-axis specifically. So I don't know if you know anything about IQ research, for example.
I know some about that.
So men, while obviously the average IQ for men and women is 100, because it's normalized, men tend to occupy a bit more of those extreme spaces. They're both the lowest and the highest IQ, and we see men doing that all the time. They tend to just have more extreme genetic traits, both for success and for struggling. Right. That's why we tend to see men overrepresented on both sides of most things. So that's why men often will trickle to the top of most workspaces, for example.
And you think that's because of extremes of IQ?
Well, not just IQ. That would be extremes of multiple things, and also I think I said.
You said IQ a minute ago.
Yeah, IQ would be one thing. I just don't think IQ is the only thing that would predict trickling to the top.
So what are the things that led men to be in those positions other than IQ?
Probably just the ability to work. They don't take time away from work for children. Their wife typically does
Could
that.
there be anything biological?
Well,
would that be biological?
IQ would be something biological.
It's partly biological, but I'm saying in terms of what a man is biologically, is that anything to do with what might be roles in society, hierarchy?
I don't think there's super good evidence that testosterone predicts anything other than aggression towards those equal or lower, and muscle distribution. I think it's a lot more going to be
muscle distribution is part of biology, right?
Sure, I just don't think muscles get you to the top of a Fortune 500
What about
company.
being a soldier? Does that help?
Yeah, okay. That's why men are significantly better soldiers than women.
But what about that high IQ? That group of high IQ, does that help get them to the top of the CEO ladder?
That would definitely help. I think it's a 45% to 60%.
And you admit that that's partly genetic?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So it seems like naturally speaking, when I appeal to my opening statement to what's natural and biological, men are just sort of fitted to those things. Their very constitution
Yeah, they
is
often
for
trickle.
those things.
Yeah, it's just with in 2025 with women having birth control and tampons, there's less obstacles to that, so they might trickle to the top too. And I just want a society that would allow them to do so.
But why? That's what I'm getting at is, if this is biological and thus, quote, natural to a degree, according to what you're arguing, what's the need for women to do what is then perhaps not natural for them to do in society?
Because there are lots of women that are still in the high IQ realm that are very capable, that make excellent bosses.
So exceptions make the rule?
No, more like freedom of opportunity, right? That's my premise. Is I want
okay.
it's like the innovator scale, right? I don't want to arbitrarily just say 50% of our society cannot be at the top of society because I want to make sure that if they're achieving the top of society, it's because of skill and like merit and et cetera, et cetera. That's what I believe in. And so I wouldn't want to arbitrarily ban women from those positions.
Right, but it's not. I didn't even talk about banning, so that was something that you interjected. What I said.
I'm not saying you did, right? Because you were asking like what I'm interested in. I'm saying a freedom of opportunity. So, women just trickle
so there's a standard which you would say that's a net.
Let's be honest. He kind of is talking about banning. Like when he starts talking about, well, you know, the natural role of men and women and where women kind of, you know, belong and where men belong and what men are better at. Like it's kind of like dog whistling of like, shouldn't women kind of be here and men kind of up here? Don't you think? Wink, wink. It's not explicit. It's not explicit. It's not clear and out in the open, but you can understand the kind of like underlying a message he's trying to send. It's like, don't you think if men are a little bit more inclined toward, you know, aggression and risk taking and ambition, that maybe that's the role they should be in and women should kind of stay out of that role? He's not saying it, but like he's basically saying it. And I think, to be fair to Erudite, it's 15 minutes in, right? Your killer instinct doesn't really start coming in a debate until like maybe like I don't know, maybe I'm not sure. I mean, when I do debates, it's always weird. Like you get that weird feeling before where you get really disinterested. Like minutes leading up, you're like, I don't care about this. It happens every time. But yeah, I mean, like, you can kind of tell he believes that men and women should occupy different spaces and that if men are more biologically inclined toward a certain thing, that women shouldn't be there. And I think in very strict scenarios, that's the truth. Like, I wouldn't want a woman in an infantry unit in the military because that just, like, the demand of it, like, economically, the demand of it emotionally and physically is so insane that you don't want anyone in the unit that could, like, even break even slightly. You don't want anybody who just like biologically has a higher risk of not being able to do the job. But like, I don't see why someone who's a woman who's hardworking can't be a CEO. Like you're just pushing papers. You're just typing up papers. You're not shooting rifles. You're not carrying bodies. You're just pushing papers. Like, I don't understand like why red pillars won't just say, we want to undo all of social progress for women and just say that. You know what I mean? It's always like, well, don't you think? And haven't you thought of? And wouldn't it make sense? It's like, just say it, you know? $5 from I Don't Dislike Erudite. $5 from Legend of Society 7 says, I don't dislike Erudite, but she effing concedes too hard, and I suspect it's to look less like crazy radical feminist, but me, I'm like, stand on business. There's a point to be made there. I think she came across as reasonable as you could, and she still didn't get the benefit of the doubt. Like, if you look at the super chats later on, it's just total disrespect. And what I've come to understand is that red pill is like, if you're red pill for real, you're probably gay. And that's okay. But like, it takes a certain level of dislike for women to like be a red pill type nigga. Like, I'm just like, bro, like if you drop $60 in a super chat to insult a random woman you don't know, you might, you know what I'm saying? Like, check your pocket for a bag of Skittles, because you might be, you might really be one of, I'm just saying what everybody else is thinking, but ain't gonna say. Okay, like, I'm just gonna say what everyone else is thinking, but isn't gonna say. If you are one of them people who's super chatting that type of shit to females, you might not, you know what I'm saying? Like, you might not like women. And if that's the case, that's cool. But like, we have to just talk about this, bro. If you really are a red pill nigga, like really about that life, you're probably not straight. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. I'm just saying, like, it gets to a point, bro. You know what I'm saying? It gets to a point.
Good for society if women are able then to interject themselves into that male space.
To be
That's a
elected,
good.
yeah.
Why is that a good?
Like I said, innovator scale.
What?
Innovator scale. More people means more innovators. We just get the best of the crop.
More people. Mm-hmm. So we should have more people in society?
Sure. But I don't know if this is connected to birth rate.
Well, yeah, because the more people in society would then
he's purposefully misinterpreting what she's saying. When she says more people, she doesn't mean more babies. She means more talent. Like, when you have more people, when you have more of a talent pool, you have better results. Like, if you withhold every single if you withhold entire demographics of people, you're going to deal with a significant talent shortage. But if you allow people who are skilled enough to occupy any position, it's a lot harder for really, really talented, qualified people to slip through the cracks. But, like, understand and realize, like, bro, there's no way he doesn't know what he's doing, bro.
Back at what you're arguing, right? Don't we need more husbands and wives to have more people?
Yeah, I just don't think these things are mutually exclusive.
How can a wife be a CEO and also raise the kids?
Tampons, birth control, like support.
So tampons and birth control raise the kids? What do you mean?
Lots of women find a way to both raise children and work.
Well,
shared parenting, like the husband takes roles. Sometimes they get babysitters. Sometimes there's intergenerational families. There's multiple ways that women share the load of parenting.
So that's a net good?
It can be, yeah.
Okay.
For
What is the standard for good here?
Do you mean like at an epistemic level?
At any level.
Good as in
your worldview, what determines the good?
So in the case of what we're talking about, I talked about the innovator scale. So the reason I like women being able to have access to opportunity is because it improves GDP.
Okay, so the net good for society is just what? More fiat money? Like what determines that?
Yep, GDP is a good thing. Do you disagree?
Yeah, I do.
You don't think
First
GDP
of all, like, what if the money is a scam?
That doesn't have anything to do with GDP. Why would not having more GDP for a country not be good?
The nature of the money itself, if the money system is a debt-based scam, doesn't have anything to do with GDP?
Not really, because GDP is about like the income of a country, right? So like debt is part of how you navigate income of a country.
Right, but our country's income is presently based on pure debt, right? Is that a bad thing?
Our GDP is not based on debt, no.
It is. Well, the whole system is based on debt. Gross domestic product is not itself debt. I'm saying the economic system itself is based on debt.
Yeah, like
it's
MTN.
a debt-based system.
Yeah, like modern theory of like money is very debt organized. It's just like debt is not this like boogaloo scary thing in and of itself.
No, I'm talking about our system is fiat. It's not attached to anything hard. There's no hard currency that our money is attached to since the shock doctrine of Nixon, right? So Nixon goes with the gold standard, so we're now a debt-based system. So I'm just saying your highest quality was the best GDP in society. So your organizing principle is a neoliberal economic theory. So what I want to know is, even if that's itself based on debt, then what's the source of the good here?
This is a ridiculous argument. Like, this, how the economy functions has nothing to do. Even still, right? What the US dollar is based on in terms of value has nothing to do with whether or not something is economically efficient. Having a significant amount of people, having a significant amount of labor is incredibly important in any economy, regardless of whether the dollar is based on gold or if it's based on debt, as he puts it. You need labor either way. You need people to work a job. And another thing, and again, like, credit to Erudite, like, you're not going to think of everything in the moment. When you're in there, like, debating, you're not going to think of everything. But this thing of, like, is it good for, like, how can a woman be a mom and a CEO? Is it good to be a mom and a CEO? It's like, what amount of women are CEOs? What amount of men are CEOs? Like 1%. So, like, even if we opened up the doors for women to be, we could open up the doors for frogs and tadpoles to be CEOs. The majority of people are never going to be a CEO. So I don't understand how women being CEOs is all of a sudden going to cause the downfall of society. And even if the economy is based on debt or fiat currency or it's fake, literally everything is fake. The concept of law is fake. We choose to agree to these different things. None of this shit is real. All of this is pretend. That street down the road ain't named John, whatever the fuck street. Niggas decided to just name it that. If you pull the goddamn sign out of the road, it don't got no name. It doesn't, like, we give things names. We give things meaning. We give things authority. Everything is made up. Like, the idea that this, even if the economy was based on gold, clearly, that's a choice that humans choose to make. We choose to base economy, the value of a currency in gold. Everything is pretend. It's all pretend. Like, and even still, even if we say, hey, we should have the US dollar should be based on gold. Within the economy we have now, having as many people in the workforce as humanly possible, having a good GDP is beneficial for the society at large. It's beneficial for everyone at large. That's just the truth. This is not a debate. This is not a discussion. This is not a he said, she said. This is objective reality. So seeing people sit there and say, like, oh, seeing people sit there and say, oh, well, GDP, money, the economy's based on bullshit. So I mean, by that logic, why even work a job? Why even work a job? Why show up on a podcast? Why is it whatever podcast taking in super chats? If the economy is bullshit, what is the point of literally anything? Like, this is the problem with, like, you know, bro, I hate these niggas, bro. Real shit.
So in this case, what is good for society is having a competitive GDP so that your enemies can't stop
That's
you.
the highest good?
That's not the highest good. That's the good of what I'm talking about in the case of women entering in.
What is the highest good that determines that that's good?
Are you talking about morality?
Just at all in your system. You tell me what your system's standard of good is.
So I'm not really sure why we're having the epistemic conversation.
Why not?
Because it feels like we're losing the plot of the conversation.
No, I want to know what your standard of the good is.
Again, what do you mean by good?
You said that the GDP is necessarily attached to the highest good.
I didn't say highest good. I said it's a good thing.
Okay, then I'm asking you what the highest good is that determines that the GDP is better than not caring about GDP.
So you're asking for my moral foundation theory?
Sure.
I'm a divine
You tell
command
me.
theorist.
From what divine command?
The Christian God.
And he says GDP is good?
No.
Did Moses come down and
I
talk
don't
about
think GDP
that?
is moral.
You just said it was the highest good
I
for
didn't say it was the highest good.
this debate.
No, I said it's good for society.
Yo, this nigga's really putting words in her mouth. You just said it's the highest good. Literally 2 seconds before, he said, you said it's the highest good. No, I didn't say it's the highest good. Oh, okay, well. And then he comes back and says again, you said it's the highest good. Bro, the fact that, like, niggas watch this and think this is, like, masculinity, and, like, I'm not gonna sit here and claim to be masculine, okay? I'm 24. I don't got my life together. Bro, I'm not even gonna sit here and pretend like I'm some kind of, like, model masculine figure. I'm a kid in the adult world of things. I don't really have everything figured out. But, bro, this is bullshit. Like, really, bro? Like, this is, like, he knows what he's doing. And this is where the debate really went left last night when I was watching it. And to see how it happened, like, actually watching it lead up, this is bullshit. He sits there and starts talking about the greater moral good. It's like, clearly, obviously, if the conversation kept going down the direction that Erudite was taking it, it's obvious GDP is one of the many contributing factors to a flourishing and functioning society, a good GDP. He then shifts the conversation from what's, you know, generally good for society to keep it functioning and prosperous to what's the greater good, the greater moral good. I mean, that's subjective. You know what I mean? Like, to someone who believes in God, GDP doesn't mean shit. To someone who doesn't believe in God, maybe GDP is incredibly important, right? I mean, regardless of what you believe in, GDP means something. The economy means something. The economy, bro, the world don't give a fuck what you believe in. If the economy crashed tomorrow, you could pull out as many Bibles as you want. You could pull out as many religious texts as you want. Ain't shit gonna change. Ain't nothing gonna change. I mean, I don't want to sit there and speak for God, but what's gonna happen is gonna happen. But this is where the conversation takes an incredibly dishonest turn for the worst.
Then it's moral if it's good.
I don't think it's moral in this case.
If it's good, it's moral.
Well, you can have good as in
good is a
functional.
moral claim.
Well, of course you can have functional claims, right?
So if it's only functional or if it's only pragmatic, then it's not ultimately a good. It's just subjective.
So at a functional level, it is, I guess, do you disagree with this idea that it's good for a state to have competitive high GDP?
It could be, but I don't think it's the highest good, and I have a standard of good. So I'm trying to figure out what yours is.
Well, what's more important for a nation state than GDP?
The health of the society.
Sure, but if the health of society is really high,
I mean, could you have? Let me give you an example. Could you have a society that's mass addicted to drugs but has a good number, a nice income?
probably not.
No, you can have societies that are full of detriment, like full of ghettos, and they're ruled over by organized crime to make a lot of money.
Typically, those countries, like if you're thinking about like the Congo or like areas that have like high levels of corruption, their GDP is horrible because typically crime is not good for GDP.
But I'm saying you could conceivably have that. It doesn't matter whether there's some exception to that rule.
It's not exception. I'd say the rule is, in general, when you have lots of corruption and drug addiction, it's not good for GDP.
But I'm saying conceivably you could have a ruling elite that makes a lot of money from drugs, and the society itself is living in shantytown, right?
I don't think.
Bro, what this is, bro, when I saw this shit last night, I was like, bro, this nigga just lost the debate, bro. You cannot conceivably have a country where everybody is perked out like Jordan Peterson sitting and the GDP, what these niggas be bro, hey, check this shit out. You cannot have a society where everybody's hooked on drugs. Let's take both of the examples. He says, conceivably, you could have a society where everybody's hooked on drugs and the GDP is flourishing. No, you can't. No, you can't. Bro, addiction, like half the people that are addicted are going to be semi-functional. The other half are going to be completely dysfunctional. They're not going to show up to work on time. They're not going to get all of their work done. Some of them are probably going to be driving high, driving drunk, committing you know what, doing this, doing that. I mean, bro, no, there would not be a prosperous GDP. If the only functioning members of society are the ruling elite and the rest of the people are basically drugged out zombies, no, you cannot have a functioning GDP. What are we talking about? By definition, you cannot have a functioning GDP if everyone's drugged and perked out. Then he says, well, conceivably, you could have a nation state with a high GDP where the ruling elite are super duper rich off of like drugs and shit. No, you cannot. That would be like that. No. The center, the elite can only hold so much wealth. In order for you to have a significant GDP, you would have to have an educated populace and a populace with a significant amount of employment. You would have to have, I mean, you cannot have a mass drug addicted, mass Grand Theft Auto populace would not have you ever played in a GTA 5 server? As much shooting and killing niggas be doing, you can't have no functioning GDP. Niggas is dodging bullets, niggas dying. Like, what are we talking about? Niggas don't even earn money, just hop in a car. You can't, bro. What? Bro, like, this is bullshit, bro. Like, real talk, like, this is that bullshit. This nigga sitting there talking about something you could conceivably. No, you cannot conceivably. This is like AO3 fan. This nigga just like saying shit. No, some things just don't work. Like, objectively, no, you cannot have a nation state where the wealth is centered into the hands of a small elite and they have a significant GDP, a GDP reflective of, like, I don't know, like Western civilization today. Like, no, we know what those countries look like. We know what these kind of oligarchical kind of countries look like, and they're not prosperous, they're not rich, they're not wealthy, they're not successful. And I think that people like him, like this guy here, whatever his name is, Jay Dyer, he needs to be honest and say, hey, look, we're willing to compromise economic prosperity if it means that women don't have jobs. Like, as we are willing to sacrifice the economic prosperity of the United States and maybe even the Western world as a whole in order to put women back in their place. That's what they just need to say. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what they just need to say. Is, look, we're willing to sacrifice all the gains we've made in order to destroy the rights of half the population. Oh, and by the way, like, I forgot what I was gonna say for a second. Hold on a second. Let me just let me Jimmy Neutron. Yeah, I think these niggas know what they're advocating for is going to destroy everything. And that's the reason why, like, it constantly shifts to an argument of, like, divine morality. Because if you actually have a discussion of efficiency, it falls apart. Like, if we're actually talking about the efficiency of taking away the rights of women does not exist. Like, obviously, your nation state's going to be more economically competitive, than if you cut half of the population out of the workforce. Everyone knows this. These niggas know inherently. They know in their heart of hearts this is true. So instead of actually having a discussion about efficiency and practicality, which is supposed to be what men are good at, men are practical, men are super duper logical, men are just super duper efficient. What you find in a lot of these debates is the opposite of efficiency, the opposite of logic, the opposite of all of those things. What you see is a prioritization of emotion of, well, I don't like the fact that women can do this and women can do that and women have the right to not choose me and women. Therefore, destroy their rights and turn us back like 80, 90, 100 years. It's not about efficiency with these people. It's not about what works best for society. It's about what makes me feel good. It's about what puts me in a position of power over someone else. This is the same argument that white supremacists make. It's not about what's best for society. It's not about what's, efficient. It's all about what makes me feel better.
That nation state would have high GDP. I don't think there's any evidence.
It doesn't matter if you think that, because it's conceivable that you could have that, right? You could have a successful oligarchy that makes a lot of money, and the people themselves don't do very well.
Are you talking about like Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, but Saudi Arabia, again, is not nearly as competitive as somewhere like America or any
Well,
major
again,
country.
how do we know that the competitiveness for women is a good? You just said that that's the case because it increases GDP.
So I'll just break
it's a
down.
circle.
It's okay. If we're going to try, like,
What?
we can do a grip with trilemma. It's just useless. I can use it at you too, right?
Well, but if I'm arguing for a moral ought on the basis of...
This is not a moral ought.
It is. You
It's
said
not.
it's a good. If you said something's
I
good...
said it's functional.
Yeah,
What word? Okay, we're doing chatter.
So
What
now
word do
you're
you want me to use when I say functional?
No, in a debate, if you're arguing for your position, then you're necessarily arguing that we ought to follow your position.
Yeah, I think I said
so it
it's
is
a
an
necessity and unavoidable. That doesn't
So
mean
it is
it's
an
a,
ought.
it doesn't mean it's a moral claim. It would be like real politic.
Well, then it's an ought, because do you think we ought to follow your
Not all
arguments?
oughts are moral.
Ought we follow your arguments?
As in, like, should you do what I prescribe for society?
Ought we follow the true arguments versus the false arguments?
Sure.
Okay. Then you're using an ought right now to argue for your position.
Sure, but this isn't a moral claim.
You just argue that we ought to follow your position. That's
It's still not a moral
claim.
claim.
It is.
It's not.
Oughts are morals if you're extending them to everybody in the theoretical realm of listening to the debate.
Do you think?
An ought can just be strategic. Like, we ought to bring women into the workforce to strengthen the economy. It's not necessarily, I mean, it is, I think it's moral. A moral argument can be made for trying to make sure everyone has access to social mobility. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a moral argument. You could be a full-on misogynist who's like, look, I don't really give a shit about these people, but it really helps the economy for them to be in the workforce, so let's just do it. That's not a moral ought. That's a strategic ought. You ought to go to the battlefield with a rifle instead of a sword. Now, that's not a moral statement. That's just a strategic, real politics that you might want to show up to the battlefield with the appropriate weaponry. Now, if you want to go to the battlefield with a goddamn Snicker and a Twizzler in your hand getting shot at by Al-Qaeda, that's cool. That's how you want to do it. You can do what you want to do. I'm not giving you a moral prescription. I'm just giving you an idea of what might be strategic for your ass to come back alive. You want to go down there with a Build-A-Bear Workshop teddy bear in one hand and a Twizzler in the other hand getting shot at by Al-Qaeda in them? Go ahead. It's not a moral prescription. It's not a moral ought. I'm saying, hey, look, world, if you want to have a competitive GDP, you might want to invite women into the workforce. That's not a moral statement. It can just be a strategic one. It's subjective to the motives of the person giving the prescription. Are they giving it from a moral perspective? Or are they giving it from a strategic perspective? Or is it both? You know what I mean? Like, this debate is like, no logical, rational man thinks he's winning this debate. Seriously, no logical, rational, and this is the part, like, this is part of why, like, I feel like the red pill is a joke, because it's this thing of like, women are emotional, men are logical. Anybody can be emotional. Emotional is a spectrum. You don't need to be crying in your car, you know, to like Miguel or some shit, you know, to be emotional. You don't need to be, you know, listening to like SZA or whatever these chicks listen to in today's, I don't know what the hell they do. You don't need to be listening to none of that's not a prerequisite for being emotional. Emotion can be how you come to the conclusion of a belief you have. Emotional can be anything. It's not just whether or not you're acting like a woman. Like, it's just like, there's nothing logical. I mean, if you want to say, hey, look, like, I don't care about GDP. Like, GDP comes second to me in terms of, like, you know, the moral fiber of society, then just say that. But he doesn't want to say that. He wants to have it both ways. He wants to say, well, you're making a moral prescription. No, I'm not. You are. I'm arguing from a place of efficiency. Erudite is arguing from a place of efficiency. This dude is trying to argue from a place of greater morality. He knows the efficiency argument can win out in the end if Erudite plays her cards right, which I don't think she ends up doing in this debate. She end up caught in the word game with him. He knows she can win, so instead of actually wading into the waters with her, he stands at the shore, you know, dipping one toe in and pulling it out. Dipping one toe in and pull. He doesn't want to get in. He doesn't want to get in the water because he knows what's going to happen.
Think that it's
So we ought
moral or
not-
not moral to have GDP? Do you think GDP is moral?
I'm pointing out that your
But you
position,
answered my question. That's
I have a
fine.
different system than you, so
Do
it's
you
not going to
think,
apply to my system.
do you think that GDP is moral?
Everything in life is conceivably or potentially moral.
How is GDP moral?
Because you extended it to, in this argument, the highest good.
I did not.
You
put-
did
I
walk
did
it
not,
back after
no,
I asked for the highest good.
No,
Yes, you did.
I did not.
You
Except
said
for a
in this-
nation state, I guess it's like one of the higher goods. Yes, it's not the highest good. And I've said,
So, and what is the good?
Jay, I don't know how to explain to you over and over that this is not a moral claim. It's real
You're
politics.
saying
It's
that?
pragmatism.
You're saying that, but ought we follow your argument in pragmatism here?
If you want a flourishing society by and large.
So we ought, logically.
Sure, but it's,
ought we
again,
logically?
it's not a moral claim.
It's not.
Is GDP a moral claim?
It can be depending upon
How?
the system.
How is GDP a moral claim?
In your system,
How is
you're
it-
arguing that what you just said we ought to follow your arguments.
I don't know how many times to tell you this.
Yeah, but
I'm not
you're
making
confused.
a moral claim.
You are.
I'm
You're
not.
saying you're not.
You're just keep telling
Anytime
me
you
I
say
am.
that there's an ought,
That's not true.
That is true.
No.
It is.
No.
Even if you redefine it as
Okay,
functional.
how about this? You don't
because-
have to have a liberal society that has a high GDP. You're just going to get stomped and you'll be a failed nation state. It's neutral morally.
Yeah, but you're missing the point about highest goods for society. You're arguing
I'm
that.
not engaging in that yet.
Well, that's go ahead.
Oh no, just if you guys can't try to. If you guys.
And this is where that's where she wins, but she doesn't win optically. Anyone who understands debate can clearly see she's won here. But I mean, when you have an audience of emotional men who like lose their minds at the sight of a woman, and not in a good way, you get the outcome you got. This is where the debate kind of like finishes and where she wins, right? He's trying to force a conversation of the greater good, or what is he calling it? Like the moral good, whatever the fuck. She never ever said it was an argument of that, and she actually does kind of like cut him off, where it's like, hey, look, you can choose not to like bring women into the workforce, but your GDP will suffer. And he's like, well, no, what about the moral good? It's like, I'm not arguing for the moral good. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not arguing from the moral good. So like, you know what I mean? You brought that up. But she, bro, like, it goes left, my G. It just goes left.
Can just try to let each other finish your thoughts, but go ahead.
So this debate necessarily comes down to metaphysical claims and epistemical claims and ethical claims.
No.
Yes, it does. Because
so we can go
feminism
there.
is about morals, ethics, biology, society, social relations. You can't divorce ethics from that. Now, if you think you can, I'm happy to address that, but that's just going to get you in an even deeper bind.
I'm not saying that you can't, that you can divorce these things. Of course, feminism
You just
has
argued a minute ago that it's not moral.
GDP is not moral.
Then you can't divorce these things. So you just contradicted yourself.
So there are lots of elements. Okay, there are lots of elements within feminism that do make moral claims, right? Lots of them. When I'm talking about something like an innovator scale, it's not a moral claim. It's real politics.
I understand you
pragmatic.
think that, but I'm pointing out that it is still moral. That's the argument I'm making.
Okay. Do you want to engage with the actual conversation now?
You saying that doesn't avoid the argument I'm
Okay.
making. I know that's what you're
Why
trying
is
to do.
GDP not good for society, or is it?
I'm saying it depends on your standard of good, and that's
about
what I'm
yours?
asking you what
What's
the
your
standard
standard of good?
is. I think GDP can be great for a society, but it's not the highest good of society,
Sure,
such
I
as
agree
the
with that.
social cohesion of society. That's more important than who's making fiat money.
Okay, what do you think is the role of the nation state?
The nation state has the job and the duty to defend its people and to maintain a healthy society, to punish the wicked, and to reward virtue.
Sure, yeah, I would broadly agree. It's to keep its citizens safe, right? Okay, how does it do that at a
But
foreign
I said
policy
reward virtue and punish vice. So there's also necessarily an ethical component there.
level? Sure, that's your claim.
Right, that's my worldview.
Yeah, I'm just engaging with it.
Right.
Okay, so then how does your nation state in your worldview protect itself from enemies?
It has a standing army.
Okay, and how does it fund that standing army?
Well, nations have gone into debt, or they have been prosperous and used their own treasuries, or they have raised money to go to war. So there's a lot of different ways that could happen.
Okay, and so what do you think is the right way to do that?
It's an oversimplification question because not everything in regard to warfare or history of civilizations is necessarily right or wrong. It's a question of what might be the best or the worst. So there can be scales. It's not
Would you
all
say
either.
That's the point. That is the point. That's what she's been saying the whole time. Oh, bro, my God. I forgot what she did after this. I hope she jumped on it.
There are some things that aren't moral necessarily. Some of them are just pragmatic, and then there's some things that are moral.
Everything could potentially be moral, but some things are pragmatic, sure.
Okay, that's basically what I've been saying.
Yeah,
So
but
we
you were
got there.
appealing to the good of a nation state.
You were, again, because you were using the word good in a way that I wasn't meaning it, and even though I clarified multiple times that I meant functional, and I even said, what word would you like me to use to
but
describe this?
I understand that
concept?
you think that saying that because it's functional, it removes the ethical domain, but it doesn't, is the point I'm trying to make. Because the
language-
question that we're debating is whether feminism is good for society or not. That's an ethical, moral
Okay,
claim.
so going back to the chatter thing, how we have to agree about words, okay? You're now essentially assigning to me what good means, and it's
no,
obvious that I'm not...
no, I'm doing internal critique is what I'm doing. You know what
You're
that is?
assigning to me...
Do you know what internal critique is?
Tell me.
So I'm criticizing your position on its own grounds. That's an internal critique. That's what happens in debates.
Okay, what word would you like me to use when I am describing this non-moral functional element that is...
The one that makes a non-moral position makes sense of why feminism is a good for society.
We can get there, but again, we have to...
You're not gonna get there.
Well, we can, but you're not even like... We're doing chatter. We're literally...
no,
we're doing
we're
what
at
you're
the
asking us
point
to do.
where you don't understand the issue. That's the
That's
point.
not true. All you've done at this point is just like... You've basically... You're just weaponizing...
No, you admitted that the debate is about whether feminism is good for society. That's a moral, ethical domain right there.
Sure, there are some moral elements.
So when you make
and
arguments
some
about
functional
GDP,
arguments.
if it's not moral, then it's not relevant to the debate.
It's absolutely moral. What language would
It's
you like
moral?
to use? I said it's not. There is moral elements and there are some non-moral elements. GDP.
Is the debate today about something moral?
I don't know if I agreed to saying we're only going to talk about epistemics and morality. Good is, again, this word that we're basically doing chatter around, where you're assigning a label to it, and I haven't agreed to
I'm
it. We
trying
can
to figure out your position on the good.
My position on the good is it's holistic. There are things that are good because it's functional, and there are things that's good because it's moral, right?
Is the debate today feminism about the good or the moral for society?
It's about, I guess, I would like to
Yes.
make the case for both.
The answer- okay, so if
Functional
then
and
that
moral.
means that everything you've been saying for the last hour is wrong.
No, because I'm making a case for the functional element too.
But the fact that you're making the case for the functional element too doesn't matter if you're also talking about the moral.
You can make both arguments.
Bro. This is like, what the fuck is this conversation, my nigga? There's nothing moral about bombing an entire city. But in war, sometimes the enemy's in the city and you're going to bomb it and civilians are going to die. There's nothing moral about that. Like when we manufacture bombs that are meant to kill people and we know it's going to kill civilians, it's not moral, but it's to the strategic benefit of the nation state. It's not moral. It might be good from a sense of like, hey, this is going to help us win the war, maybe within the confines of international law, hopefully. But there's nothing moral about it. There's no morality in blowing anything up. Bro, we do it not because it's gonna earn us points on Santa Claus's nice list. Santa Claus isn't gonna like visit your house and say, you did a great job blowing up those kids, ho ho. No, you're not getting cookies. Like, you're not getting a gift. Like, there's no reward for certain things in life. We do it not because it's moral, but because we have to. It's good, not in the moral sense, it's good in the strategic sense. It's not good to, bomb an enemy position that you think civilians might be close to, but you do it because you have to strategically. The good comes in the sense of, hey, this benefits the nation state. This might bring us closer to the end of the war, but it's not good. It's not like morally good. There's literally nothing you can take from like killing people, enemy combatant or otherwise, to say this is the moral thing to do. I mean, maybe in some cases, like if you're fighting against an aggressor, but I mean, like, life is all about doing things that aren't necessarily moral, but are like good for people. I mean, like killing animals, like feeding people with animal, protein. It's not necessarily good to kill another being, but you do it because someone has to eat. It's not inherently moral in and of itself to do so. It's just efficient. It's good in its efficiency. It's good in feeding people. It's good in taking care of people. But it's not necessarily moral because you just sliced an animal up. You just killed a being for nothing. They didn't do anything wrong. You're feeding someone who otherwise might not necessarily even need to eat meat, but you're using this animal product to feed them. It's not necessarily good or bad. It's just good in its efficiency. It takes care of someone. The idea that like you can't make an efficiency argument without making a moral argument is absolutely laughable. It's ridiculous. You can. I'm sure there were probably people who were like, man, like these peasants really shouldn't know how to read or write. But man, society is doing so much better now that they know how to. Maybe we should let them know how to read and write. Maybe it's for the best. Maybe that might be that's just the way it is. Like some things in general like are not necessarily moral at all. And some things are moral, but the person who's instituting them might not be doing it from a place of morality. They might be doing it from a place of pure personal gain. I don't understand why he's pretending to not understand this. Everything is not a question of morality and ethics. Some things really are just a matter of pure efficiency. I don't know why he's pretending otherwise.
And I would like you to engage in the first one.
Right, because the other one is the one I'm looking at, and that's the problem for you.
It's not the problem for me. The problem with this conversation is that essentially what you've done is you've assigned me a bunch of positions that I don't have.
No.
You've done a bunch of circle talk about words. You've done a couple of rhetorical flashbangs. And now we're stuck in a situation where we can't actually talk about the ideas, which is unfortunate because I was really looking forward.
You're chasing, you're like one foot is nailed, and then the other one is going in a circle. You're like a cartoon character running in a circle.
If you want to like throw Agrippa's trilemma at me, you can. I can throw it at you too. And if we do that, then there's no point. We're at an impasse. What do you think is good?
The good ultimately relates to God, the highest good.
Okay, the highest good. So is GDP in direction of that or not?
All things that exist are good in some way, and in some way relate to morals. But I do not believe that the GDP is the highest good for society.
Okay, what is the highest good for society?
The health and flourishing of the society, which has to exist within some kind of patriarchal norm. That's the only way that it can function.
Gotcha.
And the ones that don't, they dysfunction.
Okay, and so in your mind, does GDP contribute to any of that?
It's just one component of life, just like, I don't know, the size of the nation's landmass is one component.
Sure, I would agree with that.
But it's not the highest good.
Okay. Gotcha.
So what's the argument that feminism is good for society?
Feminism is good for society at a functional level because it increases innovator scale. I also think it's the right thing to do.
That's moral odds.
Yep, I'm giving you a moral claim now.
Okay, thank you. And why is it right for society?
It is right for society because I think in general we should try to treat others well, and I think limiting people's opportunity by force is bad for them. I don't think God wants that.
Okay, what God?
The Christian one.
Okay, where does he talk about this?
Forcing people to do things?
No, this idea of what the good is for society, because we have a lot of historical Christian societies.
Sure.
Were any of them feminist?
No, but I don't think in general that
Oh.
God advocates really strongly for a political system.
Really?
No.
What about when Israel was organized? Was that a political system? What did they
Like in
have?
1948?
No, in the Old Testament.
In the Old Testament. Was it? Yeah, it was a political society.
How was it organized?
I'm not a Jew.
What does that have to do with whether it was organized in a certain way or not?
It has nothing to do with my claim.
What does the Old Testament say about how God organized that society?
He gave them prescriptions about how to run their life from Moses.
How was that society organized?
It was organized, I believe, in a patriarchal society
Yes,
with matrilineal
correct.
heritage.
And it was a monarchy,
Yes.
a male monarchy.
Yep.
Okay. So in that regard, God was not feminist, right?
I've never said that God was feminist.
Well, I'm asking if there's a history example of where God organized a feminist society.
I mean, it's interesting because when you look at like ancient Judeo history, if you're not being presentist, it was like insanely progressive compared to like the pagans around them, like the Assyrians and Babylonians.
That's not what I'm asking.
Well, it is what you're asking.
You're calling
right?
it progressive, and I would just say it's healthy. So the fact that they
Sure,
had
yeah,
the
like
Ten
God
Commandments.
seemed to advocate to some degree for a better treatment of women than any other society
I
around
agree,
him.
but that's not feminism.
To some degree, you could argue that it is if you agree with my definition, which is like the
Well,
empowerment.
but your definition is so
emotional
elastic and
femininity.
broad that it could be anything
Would you
except
agree
for
to
what my position is. No, I don't, because I'm not agreeing that Old Testament patriarchal society is feminist. You just admitted it's not.
If you're not agreeing, why did we even define the words at the beginning?
Can you
of
name a
marriage
feminist
together?
society
I'm not
that God
interested.
advocated?
I'm not interested to.
You appeal to God.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to treat women well.
Did God ever? That's not feminism. Now you're equivocating.
I'm not equivocating.
Yes, you are.
How am I
You're
equivocating?
changing, moving the goalposts is what feminism is.
That's a completely different
So if
fallacy.
God has,
Equivocating
so
when
if
I'm moving-
in
hold
the
on,
law,
I'm equivocating
if-
when I'm moving the goalpost now.
It's both.
It's
You're
both.
equivocating on the word and moving the goalposts to make your position work. So if there's no feminist,
not what
if there's no
equivocating
feminist equivocating on the word,
That's not what equivocating
I know what
means.
equivocation means. Yes, it does. It means that two different understandings of a word. You're equivocating on the word, feminism, and you're defining to say that if God in the Old Testament gives women rights, that's feminism. That's not what feminism is. Feminism is a modern movement,
Then
post-revolutionary
why do you agree
philosophy.
with my definition of feminism?
Because it's so broad that that's fine if you want to defend that against patriarchy, but I'm arguing patriarchy against feminism.
So
And
all
what
you're
you
doing
appeal
now
to
is moving the goalposts by the originally.
These definitions are fluid though. Like feminism doesn't inherently, it's not an inherently strict ideology. It can fluctuate. It can take upon different extremes, different, severities. It's not uniform. Like feminism in a broad sense is just the advancement of women's rights. Most societies start from a place of women not having rights. That's kind of the base standard for most societies. So anything that advocates for the advancement of women's civil liberties or civil rights would be considered feminist in nature, for lack of a better term. You can call it progressive, you can call it liberal, or you could call it feminist. You know what I mean? Like, feminist would be an appropriate term. It doesn't, like, not all feminism is blue-haired, psychotic people with nose rings screaming at you. That's not, like, I mean, like, that's like saying every single person who was, abolitionist was John Brown and willing to, like, pick up a rifle. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like it's relative to the person, but it's the base idea that, hey, maybe this group of people shouldn't be enslaved. Hey, maybe this group of people shouldn't be married off at 12 years old. Hey, maybe this group of people should be able to get a job, read and write, get an education, have social mobility. These are all things that women historically did not have. So if you advocate for them to have any of these things, you are by definition taking a very feminist stance. It's not inherently, it doesn't mean you would agree with, like, I don't know, Big Red or like Trigglypuff or like, bro, like he's forcing definitions that aren't even being like made.
Agreeing to a definition of feminism, and now you're saying that can't work anymore because it's defeating my argument?
The Old Testament God and the New Testament God are the same God, and they never institute a feminist society. And women's rights are being made in the image of God, that women are protected now in that status.
What do you mean
is
by
not
feminist
feminism.
society? What do you mean by feminist society?
A matriarchal society
I'm not
or a
advocating that.
non-patriarchal society.
I've never advocated for either of these things.
Okay, but feminism has never been a societal goal in the Old Testament or the New Testament or the history of any Christian society.
Again,
so you have no
I haven't
examples of
advocated-
this.
I haven't advocated for any of these things. I don't
You
need to.
appeal to God as your standard of the ought and the
said-
right, the moral right.
yeah, it's a
right?
moral thing to treat
Correct.
women well.
And then I said, give me the examples of where that God ever instituted anything like what you're talking about in terms of
And I
feminism.
said
There's not. There's not.
There is, according to the definition you agreed to.
No,
of
there's
feminism.
not.
Yeah, the empowerment and promotion of femininity.
That is not what is happening in the Old Testament.
Judaism
That
is
is
the
not.
most progressive approach to femininity of all of the
Modern
ancient
rabbinic
religions.
Judaism is not the same thing as what's in the
But
Mosaic Law.
you asked for Old Testament examples, which I just gave you one.
That's not rabbinic Judaism. You admitted that it's a patriarchal society. That's
What do you
a
mean it's not rabbinic? You don't think Old Testament Judeo like?
No, it's not.
It's not
different.
rabbinic. What are you talking about?
It's not the same thing as
You don't
rabbinic
think that the
Judaism.
1200 BC society that was erected by King David wasn't a rabbinic society?
Rabbinic Judaism comes out of the 4th and 5th century when the Babylonian Talmud is collected and collated.
So you don't
That's
think
not,
that Old Testament at
is
all?
not rabbinic. No.
hold on. Rabbinic Judaism is apparently, according to my research, according to my calculations, Rabbinic Judaism is rooted in the Torah. It's characterized by the interpretation and application of the Torah through rabbinic law and emphasizing the oral tradition alongside the written text. This form of Judaism focuses on study, prayer, and community with a strong emphasis on Torah study and interpretation. The Torah, if I recall correctly, is the Old Testament. So she's right. Bro, I don't know, bro. Like, red pill, I can't debate no red pill. I'm gonna crash out. I'm gonna just keep it 100, bro. I'm just like, this is a ridiculous conversation, bro. All Erudite has to say is, look, I believe in God, but I don't use my belief in God as a moral compass for how society should function in its entirety. Boom. That's all she has to say. I don't know if she ends up saying it, but that's all she really has to say here.
No.
Okay.
And it's patriarchal. So even if it was rabbinic, it wouldn't refute it. Then there's no examples of what you're talking about.
Well, the issue for me is that what you're doing is you're creating a false dichotomy. You're pretending like patriarchy and feminism can't coexist
Correct,
at the same
they
time.
cannot.
Of course they can. We live in one.
Being feminine is not the same thing as the movement of feminism.
I didn't say that it is. I said that
You
we
did.
are.
You said that femininity is promoted in the Old Testament, and you used that as a way to prove your
I
position.
said it empowered women and it promoted femininity. It empowered women by creating matrilineal lines of inheritance, and it promoted femininity by making a whole bunch of female figures be viewed as these like incredible characters to like look up to, like Ruth and Deborah and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, there's
Which, according to the definition you agreed to on feminism, would be feminism.
Then it wasn't, quote, progressive according to your view, because other societies worship the goddess, and that would be more progressive than what you said.
If you want, we can go back an hour and we can redo chatter, and you can make a new definition for feminism that you like more, so that you can apply it more narrowly if you'd like.
You have moved the goalpost
I have not. I
from
wrote it
what
down.
feminism is
I wrote it down,
to be
and you agreed to it.
anything that. So is the goddess feminism?
I don't know what
Is
that
goddess worship in the ancient pagan world, is that feminism?
It might be.
Okay,
I'm not
thank
sure.
you.
I don't know
So
anything
your
about
view,
hold on,
so your position is so elastic that it could encompass any
Then
possible
why did you
position.
agree to it?
It's unfault because the way you framed it was anti-patriarchy, and I'm fine
I didn't
with that.
frame it that
Yes,
way.
you did.
I did not frame it that
the
way.
terms of this debate
Do you want to go back an
is
hour?
feminism good or is patriarchy good?
I wrote it down. Do you want to
The
go back
fact that
an
you wrote
hour?
it down just means that you misunderstand what you wrote down.
No,
That's even dumber.
The issue, rather than you just being bad faith for no reason,
No,
is
this
that
is, you didn't even know what internal critique is. So I'm not being bad faith. I've been debating for 25 years.
it's completely fine to know what terms are, right?
Sure, but in terms of debate, that's like 101, knowing what an internal critique is.
I understand what like consistency checks are. I just didn't use the language internal critique, right? So if we want to go back an hour, you agreed to this idea of chatter, right? How we want to define concepts, agree to them so that we can talk
We're
about
in prattle or
ideas.
chatter? I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
So if you agree to that and then you agree to the terms, you can change them later. I'm just going to be good faith. You can change them later if you want to. Let's just go back to the terms again and narrow it down to what we can agree to of what feminism and patriarchy means. Because now, like, all you're doing
I
is
gave a very precise definition for patriarchy, right?
Sure, I did
And you
too.
gave a very loose definition as to what you think feminism is, which could encompass conceivably anything that helps women. And that's an ambiguity fallacy.
then provide a different definition. Don't agree to it.
In my opening statement, I said that I believe feminism is a revolutionary philosophy that destroys society. It was brought about to change society in toto and ultimately to serve into
But this nigga got shades on inside the room. Hey, bro.
oligarchical designs and people who, and I gave sources. You can read the Rockefeller's authorized biography. They have a whole discussion about Rockefeller funding third wave feminism until
Sorry,
16.
how is this not just as ambiguous as the one? It's just a revolutionary
Just as ambiguous.
system?
I'm literally giving you the people who funded it and the actual names of the
That
people. Like
doesn't-
Cell
none of this- I don't know
16.
why you're playing with- I don't know why you're playing with authority right now. None of this matters.
No,
I'm
that's
asking
not
for
an authority.
definition.
That's the people involved. It's not an authority appeal.
Yeah, if the
You
people
don't know what
who
an
you
authority
think
appeal
funded
is.
them is an authority for the
I gave
definition
the
of
people
feminism,
involved, like Abby Rockefeller,
that
who
would
was
be an
herself.
authority.
No, it's not.
Then why are you citing them?
It's a person who's in the movement. It's not just the funder.
Yeah, you're appealing to authority.
You don't
right
know what
now.
an appeal to, that's a fact. It's not an appeal to authority. You don't know what an
You are
appeal to
citing
authority
them
is. This is so
for a
silly.
definition of feminism.
Yeah, that's not an appeal to authority.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes,
You
it
don't know
is.
what an appeal to authority. If I said my position is true because I cite the Rockefellers, that would be an appeal to authority, and
You're
that's a
saying
fallacy.
This definition
is an
is
evidence,
true
goofus.
because of the Rockefellers. If you want,
No, I'm not. I'm telling you
If
the
you
history of the movement,
that
which
has
you don't
nothing-
even know
again,
about.
I've asked you to define feminism, and now
And
what
I'm
you're
giving
doing-
you the history of that movement,
I'm
which is
asking you for a
three
definition.
waves.
Why- I
Are
don't-
there three waves of
Doofus,
feminism?
why can't you give me a
Are there
definition?
three waves of feminism?
There's four.
Okay, so there's three.
Oh, you didn't know that? That's crazy.
So there are three, correct?
There's four.
Right, but that would mean there's also three, even though there's a fourth, right?
That's true. Three is less than four.
I
Good
know
job,
that,
Jay.
but the fact that there's four, there's still three that have happened, right?
Irrelevant.
What the fuck, bro? When I saw this shit last night, I said, "Well, ain't no motherfucking way, bro." This nigga saying, if there's four, there's still three. Okay, like, well, there's two then. There's one. If there's four, there's still one, right? Hey, this nigga's on them drugs, bro. Whatever Elon doing, hey, this nigga's on them drugs. This nigga talking about some, and here's another thing. He was making an appeal to authority because that's like define being a neo. What is neo-confederate? What's a neo-confederate? You know, the definition of neo-confederate is Robert E. Lee said, and this person said, and that person said. I mean, that's helpful, but like, you don't necessarily need to quote them as a definition for being a neo-Confederate. You can, it'd be very helpful, but it's not necessary. We know that people who support the Confederacy are people who believe in slavery. Boom, like, it's not that complicated. I mean, the idea that like, hey, feminism means what this person that lived X amount of years ago thought about it. Not necessarily true. I mean, just because some like big name person funded it or backed it or, was a big part of it in its inception doesn't all of a sudden mean they are the defining voice of what that particular ideology means. So, it's just like, he is making an appeal to authority where he's saying, your definition and nobody else's definition matters. The definition only pertains to what these specific people believed. It's like, all right.
To anything modern
Wait a minute.
feminism.
Is that an appeal to authority?
What authority am I citing right now?
When you're citing facts that you think are appeals
Which
to
authority
authority.
have I cited? Name one. Name one authority I've cited, Jay. Name one authority I've
You
cited.
don't understand.
Jay, name one authority I've cited.
I'm making a joke because
What's
you
the
think
authority I
appealing to a fact is appeal to authority. Those are two
That's
different
not
things.
true.
Yes,
In
it
fact,
is.
when you were citing
If I talk
Rockefeller,
about-
you're
listen,
citing
this is so
Rockefeller
stupid.
as the definition for feminism.
No, the
then you're
funder
appealing
is
to
not the
authority.
definition, you idiot.
Then why are you appealing to them in any way?
To prove the history of the movement
Do you know
and
what
what it
an appeal to
teaches.
authority is?
Yes,
Do you know what
I
an
just
appeal
gave you
to
the
authority
example.
is? Okay.
I've been debating for 25 years. I know what the appeal to authority is. That's one right there.
Okay, so
See,
when
that's the
you
appeal to authority
appeal to irrelevant people that sound
It's not
authoritative but aren't
irrelevant.
relevant, the history
Do you know
of
why?
feminism
Do you
is
wanna-
irrelevant to you giving me a definition of
It
feminism
is.
that I can operate
Is it a
on.
historical
Can
movement?
you give me
Is it a historical
definition?
movement?
Yeah, of course.
Then the history is relevant to the definition, you idiot.
Then give me the definition. You can do it, Jay.
Nice if we
Oh
can.
my
You can do it, Jay. I
God.
believe in
This
you.
is like talking to a 5-year-old.
Yeah. Well, you're a big boy, so this should be really easy for you to find feminism. Go ahead.
Feminism is a historical movement that's concerned with the rights of women, including egalitarianism, the idea that women and men are equal. If we go back to Wollstonecraft, if we go back to the suffrage movement, if we go back to the notion of women not being married at certain ages as children. So the first wave wanted not just suffragism, but they also wanted to not have child brides and that kind of stuff.
I'm really proud of you.
But they
Two
also,
things.
listen,
One more.
I'm not,
We're super
shut
close.
up and let me finish.
We're
I'm not
super close.
done.
Yeah,
I'm not done. They also
I know
wanted better work hours. They wanted women to have inheritance rights. They wanted women to be able to
Okay, so
get
they
jobs
means-
and they wanted women in the workforce and to be in positions that they didn't have. So they wanted certain social rights that
so
women, like voting, right, suffrage, right? Those are all first wave.
Yep.
Okay.
This is your definition of feminism? Okay, I'm writing it down.
Are you serious?
Look, I'm so dumb.
You
I'm
asked for
writing
the
it down.
history of it.
I
You-
didn't ask you for the history.
you
I asked you for
you
definition.
said that it's historical,
Okay,
and I'm
rights
giving
of
you the
women.
movements.
I'm not asking for the history. I'm asking
You
you.
said it is historical, so I have to go back to the people. You're so dumb that you can't conceive of a position apart from the people who came up with the position.
So Israel. I can define Israel without
What does it
going
do?
through the entire history of Israel. Feminism, while
No,
it
you
does have,
can't. Actually,
yes, of course you can.
No, this
Because
is
for
so
the sake
silly
of
because
conversation,
you
have to
admitted it's a
agree what
historical
construct is.
movement. Therefore, it can't be divorced from the people in history.
I'm not
Do
asking
you think it
to
came out of the sky?
You're
Did it come into
this is a
people's
false
minds out of the sky
dichotomy.
or from the
This is a false
people?
dichotomy. You're doing a false dichotomy again.
What are you? Dude, you don't
You're
even. This is so crazy.
acting like you can't define it without the history. I'm telling
Correct.
you.
It's a historical movement by your own
That
definition.
doesn't mean that you can't make a definition for the words,
Yes,
so
you
we
have
can
to go
just
to
talk
the
about
people.
it.
Where do you think words come from? From people.
That
They
doesn't
don't
mean-
drop out of the sky. They come from people.
Jay, I know you can do this. You can define.
Do you need to know who the hell made the word food to know what food means? Food means something people eat, and the word food is a word in the English language used to describe what people eat. I don't need to know who the hell came up with the word to know what the word means. I don't need to know what dude was sitting in a dark room with candles all around him with big tomes of just words, writing words, food, do, boo, do. And then one day he said, food sounds nice. I don't know fuck who that was. Salute to you, my G, but like, I don't need to know who you are. You know, I don't even know who you are. I mean, respect. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate you, but like, you know, like, I don't need to know who you are. I know what the word food means. I don't need to know who invented the word.
Define a word without giving me a 5-minute
you
monologue
can't.
on the history.
No, you can't.
So there's no way for you to define feminism.
Would you go to a
without
dictionary?
history.
That's an appeal to authority.
It's not an
Yes,
appeal to
it
authority. Okay, there are appeal to authorities that are fallacious, and there are appeal to authorities that are
Oh,
non-fallacious.
like when I give the examples of the
Rockefeller as a
funders of
funder
it?
is not an appeal.
It's not just a funder. Abby was involved in Cell 16. She's not just a funder.
That doesn't matter. That
It
doesn't
does
mean-
because it came from them.
That doesn't mean that she's a relevant authority to cite.
The one who funded it and got it going at Chicago University is
Funded
not relevant.
portions of the third wave, yes.
Correct.
That doesn't mean that
No,
she
it
gets
comes
to-
out of her money.
No, that doesn't
Millions
mean-
of dollars at
again,
Chicago University.
That doesn't mean that she's the definer of feminism.
I didn't say she was. I said she's
You cited her as the definer of feminism.
She's involved in the third
What's
wave
the
movement.
definition of feminism, Jay?
Oh
You
my
can do
gosh,
it.
you're so stupid.
I got three things from you so far.
Even do a
Feminism
rational
equals
conversation.
rights of women. Men and women are
You
equal.
admitted
Labor rights.
I
I got
mentioned
three things. What
I
else is
mentioned
feminism? You can do this,
inheritance
Jay.
in terms of first wave feminism. I mentioned
yeah.
child age of marriage as another element of it.
Okay, so
in terms of the first wave.
Civil rights. Let's just call those civil rights.
That's not civil rights. It's, oh my gosh, it's
How is that
prior
not
to the
civil
civil
rights?
rights movement. You idiot.
That doesn't mean it's not civil rights, Jay. I'm just trying to create a way to make this succinct so we can get a fucking.
This is where this nigga lost. This is where he lost. It's not civil rights. It's civil rights movement. Like, bro, civil rights does not mean black people. Like, bro. Civil rights does not mean black people. It's what black people didn't have. Therefore, they had to advocate for. But it does not mean black people. Like, bro, like, civil rights applies to all people, like, participating in civil society. he's so amped up to make a point that he like, bro. This what happens when you so ready to like rumble, ready to say something, ready to do something, ready to turn up. He just ready to give an answer. Like, think about what you're saying before you say it. Bro, this nigga's getting mad sassy.
Definition because you don't like mine, which is fine.
I said
that's why I'm just
yours
trying
is
to get a
too
new
broad.
one. That's fine. Make your own.
I'm giving the historical. I don't need my own definition.
Yes,
it's your position, you goofus.
No.
You debate positions like when you debated Jim Bob, and you tell people to define your position. This is how silly you are.
No, Jay.
You gave a broad definition.
I gave you a definition, and you
which
don't
is too
like
broad.
it. That's
No.
fine. Make your own definition, and then we can work from there.
I don't need to make a definition.
Yes,
It's
you
not
do.
my position.
If you have rejected my definition, you now have to supply one.
Yes, I'm going to the people who came up with it. Correct.
Rockefeller didn't come up with it.
I said Mary Wollstonecraft in my opening statement is one of the first feminists in modern society.
Do you want to supply a definition? This doesn't matter, Jay.
Bro, this nigga a bad bitch. This nigga silence. This nigga a city girl. Somebody call up Young Maya. This nigga's a city girl. Hold up, bro. Hey, wait a minute, bro. Hey, this nigga's actually a female. Hold up, this nigga. Yo, hey, bro. We gotta shut this shit up, bro. This nigga a bad bitch. Yo, this nigga's a bad bitch. How this nigga, bro? Hey, red pill niggas is, yo, y'all niggas got way too much sugar in the packet, bro. Y'all gonna, bro. For a group of niggas who swear they represent masculinity, way too much sugar in the Kool-Aid, my nigga. Way too much sugar in the Kool-Aid. You tripping. Too much sugar in the iced tea. This nigga silence. The shades ain't helping. The palm tree shirt ain't helping. That was supreme zest. That was zest D. I mean, that was crazy work, bro. The this and the this and the this. Normally, I wouldn't bring this stuff up because as human beings, we oftentimes fluctuate in mannerisms, right? Even the most masculine of men, when they're talking, their hands might go like this or like this or this. Yeah, normally I wouldn't care, but when you are like advocating for women to not have civil liberties, I'm gonna be a little bit more, judgmental in your mannerisms, a little bit more prosecutorial, if that's even a word. I'm gonna be a little bit more attentive to the way that you act. You know what I'm saying? Cause he doing a little bit too much. You know what I'm saying? Doing a little bit too much. This nigga's a bad bitch. I'm like, who is the female here? Is it Erudite or is it Jay Dyer? Or hold up, there we go. Who's a bad bitch in this conversation? This nigga's a bad bitch. This nigga said silence. Hold up, we gotta rewind that chat. We need to hold up.
One of the first feminists in modern society.
Do you want to supply a definition? This doesn't matter, Jay. Just make a definition.
So the people who came up with it don't matter.
They matter if you can get to getting a definition out of your fucking mouth. We've got We've got four elements of feminism now. Okay, so
who came up with it don't society.
Do you want to supply a definition? This doesn't matter, Jay. Just make a definition.
So the people who came up with it don't matter.
Okay, I'm being childish. Let me stop. I know we got to keep going. Okay, I'm done. I swear.
Matter if you can get to getting a definition out of your fucking mouth. We've got four elements of feminism now. Okay, so we've got rights of women, like men and women are equal, egalitarianism, labor rights, and civil rights. Is there anything else you would like to add to that definition?
As we move into modernity, we get more radical versions of this, particularly with Cell 16, which becomes almost a revolutionary terrorist movement, which wants to engage in radical action and Skittles rights, shall we say. So they move into it being Skittles as well.
Okay, so
now, I don't care if you reject
trans rights.
I don't care if you reject that or accept that. Because I'm looking at this as a historical movement, because guess what? Feminism is a historical movement. That's what we're debating.
You might not believe me, Jay. I'm so disappointed about this conversation. I talked about chatter because I was interested in a good discussion.
You keep saying chatter doesn't have anything to do with the fact that I did an internal critique and you didn't know what that was. And then I start going to the history of feminism and then you're floundering.
You're just saying
I'm just saying stuff.
Yeah.
There we go.
So going to chatter, the reason I asked you about it is so that we could have a decently good conversation so that we weren't quibbling over the definition of words and we could actually engage in conversation. If the only way that you can debate for the last 25 years is to just quibble about semantics of words, I'm sorry, you're not a king debater. You're just bad faith.
You asked me the last 30 minutes to define a word. So you're the one who's quibbling about semantics.
I'm
That's
not
semantics.
quibbling. I'm literally not quibbling. I am writing down your words.
Oh, so if you're writing it down.
I'm granting. It's not semantics because I'm just granting your
I thought it
definition.
was semantics. No, it's not.
It's not semantic debating because I'm not disagreeing with you on your definition. I'm literally begging you to just give me one. I'm begging you at this point because you don't like mine. So let's give yours.
I don't care what
Rights
your
of women.
definition is because all I have to do is critique your position internally and point out
You
that
do
it's
have
so
to care
ambiguous.
about my definition if you're going to do an internal critique. That's the fundamental of a fucking internal critique. Is that
Oh, now
have
you
to
do know
use my
about it. So you
definition.
just learned about internal critique about 10 minutes ago, and
Yeah.
now you're going to lecture me on it.
You're a really good teacher, Jay. What can I say? So
The debate's over.
you do care
She
about
admitted she's learning
you
a
do
bit.
care about feminism and my definition of it because you need it for the internal critique, which you've already
I don't care
acknowledged.
about it because
But now
it
you've
doesn't
rejected my
actually-
definition of feminism. So again, I know being mean to women is your fallback.
Oh,
You
now
have
there we
nothing
go.
else to
Now there we go.
It's not an ad hominem. I didn't say
Being
you're
mean to you?
No,
Who's being mean to
I
you?
didn't say you're wrong because you're being an asshole. I just said you're an asshole.
Now you're getting your feelings
That's not an ad hominem. My feelings are
not
fine.
an ad hominem.
No, insulting people and being mean isn't ad hom. You should know this. You can Google it. Google it at home. An ad hom is when you use the insult of a person to discredit them. So if I said, Jay, you're wrong because you're mean, now I'm ad homing you. As a debate bro of 25 years, you should know your fallacies better. You've already been wrong about multiple fallacies.
Really?
And you can't. Yes, and you can't define feminism. Do you want to get there?
You already admitted that I gave you four elements
it seems like you have
the first.
more.
So
5 actually.
I think
It
that
seems
you
like you have
actually
more
think
that you want to add.
you actually think like
Or you have
maybe
to
a
do this
100 IQ person that the way that you define something is you literally just look at a definition in a dictionary and then you just list it out and that's the definition of the word.
False.
That's
False.
Really?
Yeah, I've never said
because
that.
I'm giving you the entire
Jay,
context of the history of feminism
why?
and you're saying I need a fucking definition
Yeah.
as we're working through the actual history of it and the definition of
because
what
again,
it is.
to give me-
You admitted that it's a historical movement.
That
didn't
has
you?
nothing to do with you giving me a definition.
You
so that we can talk
admitted
about it.
that it's a historical
Of course, Jay.
movement,
Yeah.
so the history has to do with it. You idiot.
I don't need the history for you to give me a definition. You
We
idiot.
have to go to the people who are the philosophers of it.
You can just define
like
it.
Mary Wollstonecraft and her positions.
You can just define
like
it.
egalitarianism.
You can just define it.
I'm defining it for you. I've been defining it. You just keep yapping and melting down over your
No,
notes.
the issue is that it has taken me pushing you to be specific over and over for 45 minutes. We have 5 points now.
Because you don't have
Feminism.
anything other than this.
That's false.
How
I
does
gave
any
you
of
multiple
this
definitions.
prove your position that feminism is good for society? As
Honestly,
a feminist,
can we
you're
get there?
showing us that you're not good for society. So you're actually proving my point as you yap and argue. You're
That's actually
proving
a great example of an ad hominem.
Yes, that is
an ad
That is
hominem.
but it's an illustrative ad hominem. Yes,
That's
correct.
true. It was a very creative ad hom. Okay, so we have 5 points that you would like to define feminism. Is there any other points that you want to define feminism with?
Yes,
Is there
the
anything
people who
else?
funded that also said
Yeah.
that they like the movement because it destroys the nuclear family, gets women in the workforce, taxes the other half of the population, and reduces the population because there's less families.
How do you want to summarize that?
Why do I have to,
Destruction of
you can't
nuclear
remember
family?
what I just
So
said? You
feminism
can't
is-
remember 4 sentences I just said?
No, I can remember. I just want to like you're just very yappy, and so I'd like to
I'm
make it
yappy.
succinct. Yes, you
I'm
to
yappy.
get
I'm sorry, bro. Like, I know if you say this, they'll say that you're like a soy boy or you're a pussy, a pussy. But bro, there's a way to talk to women, bro. This shit ain't pee. You know what I'm saying? Like, this shit is not pee. This ain't, bro. This. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's ain't nothing play about the way he's talking. I'm not saying he has to be flirtatious. I'm just saying this ain't smooth. This ain't it. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but there's a way, bro. Like, there's a way. This ain't the way, though. This ain't the way, bro. Like, hey, this can't be the way, bro. Like, this shit ain't pee. This shit is not pee, bro. Like, he should have kept it player. All the like, bro, you too old, bro. Like, even when I was in elementary school, I did like, bro. You know, I'm like, bro, like, come on, bro. Like, if you're one of the type kids, like, you gotta leave it behind at some point. You too old to be doing this, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, bro, like. It just, but he came in the debate bad faith from day. You know what I'm saying? And that's really the reason why this shit got to the point it did. When you pull up to the debate bad faith from jump, of course it turns out like this. Of course bullshit like this gonna go down because he on bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just feel like this debate went left because the nigga was on bullshit. That's just my perspective. That's just my take. I just feel like, you know what I'm saying? Nah, I'm not only covering this today. I think she did one more debate I want to look at, and then we have the witch doctor that Trump appointed to being Surgeon General. So, yeah, I don't know if I want to cover that, like. I'm sure there's something to cover tomorrow. Whatever. Surely by tomorrow, the Trump admin would have done something so ridiculous, there'll be something to report. Max Ferretti, I think a woman abused him before. That's a possibility we haven't taken into account. Is maybe some of these dudes got UFC comboed by a woman and just don't want to admit it. And I don't mean to make fun of the idea of domestic violence, but That's just a theory we can't that's just a theory we can't ignore. You know what I mean? Like, it's possible one of these chicks put one of them like Valentina Shevchenko type combinations on these dudes, bro. You know what I'm saying? Them and they ain't been the same since. That brain damage, that CTE is sitting in right, bro. I'm telling you, bro. Like, I'm just saying. That might be a possibility we can't ignore.
Give me a definition. You've had to give me an entire century's worth of history.
Even though, like when you admitted that it's a historical movement, so it can't be divorced from the
you know
historical
what you could
people.
have done? You could have just said to me, so that we can move forward with this conversation. Feminism is
Yeah, but I'm not going to grant you.
Women,
It's a debate. So I'm not going to grant you simple answers in a debate.
Why wouldn't
to
you
help
just define a word?
I don't owe you a definition.
Maybe we could avoid some of the insults, and if we can, also allow people to finish their thought. Let's try to
okay. Are you
not
happy?
do interruptions, but go ahead.
Yeah,
I want to know how any of this helps your case to prove feminism is good for society.
Well, we can get there now that we've defined feminism. So destruction of nuclear family is another one that you would like to add to the definition of feminism.
That's why the people who fund it matter, is because they say that.
Okay, I would argue that the destruction of nuclear families is not inherent to most feminist movements and is bad. So I reject that part of your definition.
So the people who want that in society and say that it does that don't matter. Because you have
they're not the feminism that I'm fighting
because you have a definition that is so elastic to make it anything that you think helps women. And that's why I've said you've already lost the debate, because you're elastic.
The
it's not
empowerment,
specific.
well, you define
That's why I asked
empowerment
about
of women and promotion of femininity. So empowerment means things like removing obstacles.
Ambiguous.
And promotion of
It's
femininity would be
ambiguous.
like making feminine traits viewed as respect-worthy.
Like submitting to authority in men. Is that a feminine trait?
No, I would not say so.
So it's not clear. It's ambiguous.
I would say
So
submission is
You have to
feminine.
define it.
I would say submission is feminine, but I don't think it's to men specifically. No.
okay.
It would be like to any authority, right?
To any authority.
Yeah.
Are most authority men?
A lot of them are, but some
So it
are
would be to men.
Nope, it would be to authority. But men are to class.
But
Men are to class.
most authorities are men, and they are submitting to that, right?
So
it would be.
yeah, but the idea. Okay, you love semantic fights.
No, it's called a debate.
I can do that too. If you want to just like mock you every time you stutter, we can have a super fun
It's just how debates work. I'm sorry.
Mocking people when they stutter is not.
Rhetoric is part of debate. Yes,
this is not rhetoric. This is just you being.
If you're watching Oxford Union debate, they make fun of me.
Wait, somebody said this is why I don't like debates. It's just WWE for nerds. Damn, why you gotta say it like that though? You can't like flatter us more and call it like UFC for nerds. Some it got to be WWE though. Like, damn, I never thought of it like that. Damn, you just fucked it up. You just fucked it up for everybody. You just fucked it up. I'm just kidding.
Each other.
I'm fine with making fun of each other.
That's what I've been doing.
Okay. Would you like to have a productive conversation too, or do you want to just? Do you want me to circle the drain?
I'm having a great time.
That's fine. We can just continue to circle the drain.
And how does this prove feminism is good for society?
Okay, so I already said I would reject the destruction of nuclear family. I don't think it's central to most feminism. I think most.
Was it central to self-16?
It sounds like it was, but I would say most fourth wave feminists, for example, are not very pro destruction of nuclear family. In fact, there's like an entire like barefoot pregnant movement within the fourth wave that is very much about embracing being pregnant, being motherhood, and like promoting that as a good thing.
Is that the attitude that most feminists in society have?
I would say a lot of young feminists are directly.
Are they the most?
I would.
No, they're not.
Most also don't want to destroy the nuclear family.
Well, in academia and
most
society in
feminists
general,
want to get married and have kids.
Does this worldview promote, in general, in society, in academia, and in the corporate world, the destruction of the family, or does it?
No. It tends to promote it. Yeah, they want women to be mothers.
Really?
Who can also
Feminism promotes women in society in general.
I would say fourth wave feminism is very pro mother. Yeah.
I asked you about the majority of feminism. Today.
Most feminists are fourth wave.
That's institutionalized.
Yeah, most institutional academics are fourth wave.
And they want people to have kids.
Yes.
They're not anti-natalists.
Some of them are, but most of them are not.
Institutions?
Yes.
No, that's crazy.
I don't know what to tell you. I've been reading lots of fourth wave
I've been in
feminists.
academia. I've been in
Me
institutions.
too.
I've never met a feminist in academia or in institutions who thinks that there should be more people and more kids. They all believe in depopulation, the ones that I've met.
That's crazy. I've just met lots of feminists that don't believe that. And regardless, those feminists who are like basically death cult feminists, I'm not interested in advocating for the worldview.
That's fine.
I don't have to own them.
But the history of feminism,
Just like you don't have to own like Protestants or
most
something.
feminism, right? So you've got a nuanced feminism, I guess, is your take, right?
I just have like a pretty traditional like fourth wave feminism.
Okay, so but it's not historic feminism, right? Or is it first wave?
It's fourth wave,
So it's tied to history?
of course, because there's
Oh,
waves.
so it is tied to history.
Yeah, but the waves,
but
the essentials of the waves is that
you
there's.
said
I've never ever said that feminism isn't tied to history. You've just made that up.
I think we could go back about 20 minutes. So you can do what I do. You know, we go back 20 minutes when you said that history doesn't matter.
I said for your definition, it doesn't matter. You can hold
You
frame,
just
Jay.
literally,
You can do this.
you have
Jay,
doublethink
hold
going
your
on.
frame.
Have you read 1984?
You can hold
Have you
your
read
frame. I
1984?
have,
Right, you know what
yes.
doublethink is?
Yes.
It's the ability to contradict within a couple minutes.
I didn't
and it just
contradict.
goes-
If you remember, we can roll back the tape. We were talking about defining.
Do you think
and I cared-
definitions are
Can I finish
relative?
my thought, or are you just going to interrupt me?
Because I'm trying to,
Can I finish my thought?
I'm trying to hone
Can I
in
finish
on
my
what
thought?
this weird mistake is, because it's weird.
Guys, if we can at least, we'll let the insults go. If you guys want to insult each other, we'll allow that. But at least let each other finish their thoughts. Go ahead.
Okay. The reason that we went into the history and why I said I don't care about the history is I was asking for a functional definition so we could move past that part of the conversation. I always acknowledge that history was part of the feminist movement and it's tied to.
I reject that there is a definition divorced from history.
I've never said that there's a definition divorced from history. I said I don't
You
need the
did, because
history.
you
I
asked
said
me.
I don't need the
you
history
asked me-
lesson. I
you
don't
asked me
need the
for that
history
divorce-
lesson.
You asked me for that.
You gotta let me finish.
You asked me because you're lying. You asked
I'm
me for
not
that divorce.
lying.
You said divorce from history. What is your definition? That's what you said.
Yeah, I did want the history.
Thank you. So you just contradicted yourself.
No, I didn't
Again,
contradict myself.
You're a
Dave.
machine of
You're
contradiction.
desperate. You're so desperate. You're like, God, how do I get this win? I asked for you to stop giving me all of the history and just give me a definition so we can
I don't
move the fuck
accept
on.
that there is a definition of divorce from history, and you just admitted that
So
you
there's, you don't have the brain capacity to define something without a 5-minute monologue about
You
history.
just admitted you can't do that. You
Define
idiot.
Israel. Are you going to go back 3,000
I
years
will,
to define
correct,
it?
yes, because it's an ancient historical nation. Yes,
So you
correct.
can't define Israel without giving me a 10-minute monologue.
It's a false analogy because feminism is a
not a false
modernist movement.
analogy.
Oh my God. Like, obviously you can define feminism without going into the deep depths of like the history of it. If I ask somebody in Spain, what is the United States of America? They'll say it's an English-speaking country in North America made up of 50 states Boom. That's generally like a pretty accurate summary of what the United States is. They might not go in depth about George Washington and the founding fathers and, you know, the Articles of Confederation and then the Constitution and that's not necessary. I just, like, can you tell me what is the United States? It's a country of English-speaking people in North America, or they'll just say America, because I think in Spanish, America's one continent in the Spanish-speaking world, so I actually got that wrong. But yeah, I mean, like, bro, like, I don't need a dissertation on American history, right? Like, if I ask somebody, what are Black Americans? So if you go all the way back to Harriet Tubman, like, you don't need to tell me about Harriet Tubman. You know, like, you could, but like, it's just not necessary. Like, you know, like, what are Europeans? Well, if you go back to Charlemagne, if you go back to, you know, King Charlemagne, and you go back to Pepin the Short, and you could do that, but like, that's not necessary. Like,
It's a modern movement. It's not an ancient civilization.
That doesn't matter.
It does matter.
No,
You just saying it doesn't matter just shows your lack of
is not
intellect.
at all a false analogy.
You are melting down right now because you contradicted yourself
I'm melting down
within 2
because you said that
minutes.
you had 25 years of debate history and you can't get a single fallacy
Look at you.
correct.
You're melting down.
You said
You're
false-
spiraling.
How is that a false
You're
analogy?
melting down.
How is that a false analogy, Jay?
Because it's a modern movement. It's not an ancient civilization.
What does that have to do with anything when it comes to
Because you
comparing history
contradicted
for
yourself,
definition?
and in debates, contradictions are what make you
nothing to do with
lose.
a false analogy. How is that a false
That's how you lose
analogy?
a debate, correct.
How is that a false
Contradicting
analogy?
is where you lose a debate.
So you can define Israel without giving me the centuries of history. Is that what you're telling me?
I didn't say that. You just said that.
You said it was a false analogy.
You
So what's
said
the false analogy? I never said that.
You said that. So you're yapping because you got caught.
I didn't get caught.
You did.
Again.
You did. You said that history.
No.
You said history doesn't matter. Give me your definition, and then you just said history matters. It's part of the definition.
I did not say history matters as part.
You
No.
did. Yes, you
Jay,
did.
Part of debating is holding frame, right? Would you agree?
Like when you did that, is that holding frame or what is that?
No, that was making fun of you, obviously.
Okay, right.
So part of debating is holding frame.
Like putting dongs in your mouth. Is that holding frame? I don't
No,
understand.
that's funny.
Is it?
We're all laughing about it. Yes, it's
Or are we
funny.
laughing at you?
Kind of the same thing. That's kind of what performers do, right? Yeah. So part of debating is holding frame.
Is any
bro, grown niggas, like, bro, grown ass niggas carrying on like this is crazy, bro. This shit can't be like, this nigga's talking about dongs in your mouth to a woman he's not in a sexual relationship with. Did I get that correct? Did he say dongs in your mouth to a woman he's not, like, in that kind of, like, hey, bro, you know, like, I really would have much rather watched Trump debate than watch. At least Trump is kind of entertaining, and his insults aren't too crazy. You know, except that one time he called Biden a Palestinian, but outside of that, I don't think he ever went too far. This is crazy. You know what I mean? She made the gesture. Okay, maybe I missed it because I just couldn't look at the train wreck in front of me. Bro, where do red pill niggas get to talking like this to women though? Like, I really don't. I'm not trying to be the white knight. I swear to God, I'm not trying to be the, you know, my fair maiden, you know, my lady, you know. I'm not trying to be knighted by, you know. I'm not trying to, you know. This is not an attempt at chivalry here. I just feel like it's not P. You know what I'm saying? Like, this shit ain't P. Like, ain't nothing fly. Like, you can't, like, no sane man looks at another dude talking to a woman like this and is like, this is how I want to be when I grow up. Like, this ain't right. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's gotta be another way. You know what I'm saying? Like, bro, like, maybe red pill niggas are just, like, beyond redemption. You know what I'm saying? I feel like red pill niggas really are at a certain point where it's like, you can't save these niggas, bro. Legends of Society with the $2 super chat. How old is this man? 10 or 42? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, bro, there's just a way to talk to women. I feel like, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like there's a way to talk to women. And I don't mean flirt. I don't mean, you know, I just mean, like, bro, like, there's got to be the way you would talk to a man, you know? The same way you would speak respectfully to a man because you know there's a chance he could jump over the table and pop you upside the head. It's the same way you should talk to a woman, I feel. Yeah, but some of these hoes is crazy. You saw that when she that chick pulled out a weapon on on academics. Hey, some of these hoes really will shoot you behind the debate, bro. Damn you to hell, you made an enemy. What are you asking me, bro? I don't know. You're asking me about stuff. I don't know what you're asking. What's the question? I'm not trying to be mean. I don't know what you're asking. $5 Kodachrome. Dude, red pill guys are too far gone by default. The only thing that can be done is isolate the disease at all costs. Yeah, I don't even know if red pill's ever gonna go away. You know? I don't even know if it's ever gonna go away. I don't know what those are, what you're asking me. I literally do not know what any of that is. I'm just gonna keep it 1,000. I have literally no clue. If I knew, I'd give you an answer, bro. But I swear to God, I'm not trying to be a dickhead. I don't know what you're talking about. If I knew, I'd tell you, though. Did you see the Bronx chick that beat up the pro-lifer? Yeah, I saw that clip. Are you talking about liberal channels? Like liberal YouTube channels? My G, I don't know what those are, bro. I'm gonna keep it 1,000. I'm not trying to be mean by not answering your question. I just don't know. I swear to God, I just don't know.
Any of that's going to prove that feminism was good for society?
We literally can't get there because you are still quibbling.
You make my case.
I'm not making your case. Again, just an ad hom. You love fallacies. My favorite thing about you is that you cite fallacies constantly. You don't know what they mean, and you can't define them properly.
Like how history is not part of feminism.
How is it a false analogy? To compare Israel, defining Israel?
Because it's an ancient nation state. Why does feminism is a modern political, social, revolutionary movement. They don't compare.
So why does the extent of the length of history make them disanalogous?
You've already lost the debate because you had political, social, revolutionary movement. They don't compare.
So why does the extent of the length of history make them disanalogous?
You've already lost the debate because you admitted that the definition can't be divorced from the history, and then you said the opposite. That means you've massively contradicted yourself within the last 5 minutes.
Again, you're just making shit up. I'm glad that the made-up narrative of the story...
Everybody heard you.
Okay,
So
I'll do this. Jay just lost the debate because you strawmanning me and putting words in my mouth that didn't happen. Wow, I'm really good at debating. Do you want to go back to the actual conversation?
Sure.
Okay, so why is it falsely analogous when you're saying that to define words, you must include the entire history to define the word? Why is it disanalogous to compare feminism to Israel? I asked you to define feminism, and I asked you to define Israel, and I asked you if you could define Israel without the 3 centuries of history. And you said, well, it's different. It's a false analogy. Why is it a false analogy?
Because they're two totally different things. And you already admitted that feminism is a historical movement and that it can and can't be divorced from the history.
So is Israel.
That's making my point, you goofus.
No, it's
yes,
not.
It is.
I'm saying you can obviously define Israel without going through 3 centuries, which you agreed to. That's why you don't.
It's a false analogy because
you won't define Israel with the 3 centuries because it's just long. It's just long.
It's an ancient
Whereas
nation state.
Modern feminism only has 100 years, so I can give the history of that, but I can't give the history of Israel to define it because it's too long. Essentially, that's your argument. That's what. Yes, that is your argument. It is not falsely analogous. And also, comparing two different things is the point of fucking analogies.
The more that you talk, it makes my whole case here that feminism is a net negative for society. Thank you for representing
feminism, by the way. All you're doing is making me be like, maybe the rad friends are right and men gotta be out of power because they cannot keep up. If this is what like 2 masters and a philosophy degree do,
right? You literally contradicted yourself.
I think the conservatives are right. Don't go to college, guys. You're gonna end up like this. Not good.
I don't recommend people go to college, by the way, because you are the people that teach at college. So you're like the college professors I debated, the women I debated. You're like them. So they should go to college if you want them to be in your position, right?
No, if they end up anything like you, they should definitely not go to college. You're like, I had a philosophy degree and I don't know what fallacies are.
Did I say that? Was that a cut down?
Yeah.
Good one. Try again.
This would be a perfect moment to read a
Bro, what the fuck is this conversation, bro? This is bullshit. Deadass. Like, it gets to a point, my nigga, where, you know what I'm saying? Like, what the fuck is this conversation, bro? Yeah, we're watching it in we're watching it at like 175 speed because I just don't have the I mean, I have the attention span, but like some of y'all don't. You know what I'm saying? Some of y'all got that goldfish attention span, that, you know, golden retriever attention span. So as a result, I've sped it up.
couple chats here. We have Kat, who gifted 50 memberships. Thank you so much, Kat. Guys, W's in the chat for Kat. Thank you for the gifted 50 whatever memberships. Robert Tanner, thank you for the gifted 50 whatever memberships. Thank you so much. We also have Rachel Wilson in the building. Thank you for the gifted 5 memberships. Really appreciate it. And then we have a couple chats coming in here through Streamlabs. Let me get those pulled up. If you guys want to get a message in, it's $99 and up. We have Intel Wild. Oh, it's coming in as a TTS.
Intel Wild donated $100. Not so bright. Do you like BDSM because you were getting spanked by Jay?
Classic. When you can't defeat a woman, you just have to sexually
Like when you
degrade
do
her
the
and make a
dongs in
joke
your
out of
mouth like that? Is that a good example what you're talking about?
When I'm
So I can't
sexually
defeat a woman,
myself.
so you put dongs in your mouth
No,
because
I
it's
said
funny?
you can't defeat a woman without sexually degrading her and then making a joke.
Like when you put dongs in your mouth. Is that sexually degrading?
Myself. That was
Oh,
myself.
by yourself. Okay, right. So it's all subjective, like relativism.
Usually you can make jokes about yourself.
Do you believe in relativism too?
Yeah, I do.
Really? Is it self-refuting?
No.
Is relativism true?
But depends on what you mean by true.
Is everything relative?
Yes, but that doesn't mean it's like subjective.
It
You
means the
can't
same thing.
conflate it. No, it does
Yes,
not.
it does.
No, it does
Something being
not.
totally relative means that it is subjective.
No. I'm sorry. That is like a philosophy 101.
It's correct. Philosophy 101, you would learn that if something is completely relative, then it's purely subjective. It's the same.
No.
Yes, it is. It's
No,
the same,
you're
it's the
conflating
same
subjectivism
content.
to cultural relativism at best.
I know the difference between
The
the two.
opposite of
It doesn't-
relativism?
Your position
What do you
is
think the opposite of relativism
you've
is?
already, now that you've admitted that everything is relative
What do you think
to
it is?
you.
What do you think it is?
It's-
The opposite of
There's
relativism.
epistemic relativism. There's cultural relativism. There's ethical relativism.
What's broadly the opposite of relativism?
Everything is relative to your vantage point, your perspective.
What's the opposite?
Perspectivalism.
You
No,
don't
it's
know,
not.
do you?
You're an idiot.
It's absolutism. It's not objectivism.
Relativism is not absolutism.
No, the opposite of relativism is moral
It's objectivism.
No, it's
yes,
not.
it is.
No, the
You're an
opposite of-
idiot.
You don't
You've
know
never
about
had. Have you?
philosophy.
I don't know
That's crazy.
philosophy.
That's
Right.
crazy.
I've debated all the top atheists and philosophers, and you
I'm
don't
not
know.
gonna lie. I didn't expect that. You should
The
definitely know
opposite of
this.
relativism is objectivism.
It's absolutism.
It means the same thing.
No, it does
Yes, it
not.
does.
No, it does not.
You have a problem with words
That's
that you
crazy.
think that two different words can't mean the same thing.
Okay, moral absolutism is when you can apply things universally. Objectivism
Correct.
is that something can be like capital T true. These are
You can
not
use
the same thing.
You can use the terminology. You're arguing
These are
with
not the
idiot.
same
Yes,
thing.
they are.
No, they're not.
Moral objectivism. What is that?
Moral objectivism is believing that there's like a capital T true you can find. Yeah, that's not the same
No,
thing
no,
as
no, no,
absolute.
it's not.
Kant is
Moral
absolute.
objectivism. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yes.
Moral objectivism is that there are moral absolutes. It's that simple.
No.
Yes.
No.
What do you mean no?
That's crazy. Can I get
Moral.
water?
So now she wants to run and get water.
No, I'm not running. I'm actually just, I'm gobsmacked.
Oh, there's some under
Oh,
yeah.
Right, because
I'm genuinely
you have
gobsmacked that the Phil
basically
student
you have
doesn't do
essentially
this.
you have an elementary school level education, and you're actually debating people who actually
Which
know what philosophy
is crazy because despite my little education, you still don't know what relativism is versus like absolutism and objectivism. That's fine. We can move
I've
on.
debated the dude from the Objectivist Foundation, the Ayn Rand Foundation, so I'm pretty sure I know.
Again, then you would
And
know that
he presents a
objectivism.
position. Do you understand that a word can mean different things in different contexts? So if I say that something is morally objective, or that it's morally absolute, or that it's not relative or subjective, it all means the same thing, even though it's different words. Did you know that?
That's crazy. Okay.
That's crazy. That words can mean the same
Yes,
thing is
that
crazy.
you don't have any concept of the philosophical compass is crazy.
The philosophical compass.
Yes.
So memes, meme level philosophy. Yeah.
It's not meme level
It is a
philosophy.
meme. It's a meme.
It's
It's
not.
meme level philosophy because you thought that words didn't mean the same thing.
Okay.
We have a chat coming in here from Robert. One sec, guys. Let's get that pulled up. There it is. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate
Robert
it.
donated $200. Hey Brian, comment on this discussion. Bloomberg just reported 2 days ago that for the first time ever, white men are slightly now less than half of board members at S&P 500 companies. Progress on GDP?
Thank you, Robert. Do you guys want to discuss that or?
Not. I don't know if that's even true. If that's true. I feel
Maybe it's
neutrally
like
about
not
it.
the Okay.
It depends on like why it's the case, right? I think like white men in general are being like pretty shittily treated by society right now. I think there's like a fair bit of like persecution. So I suspect that the reasons behind that is bad. But maybe it's neutral. But probably it's bad. But maybe it's neutral.
All right, we have 3 other chats. Unless Jay, you wanted to weigh in on that
No,
one?
I agree. It's bad, yeah.
Sure. We have Whatever Fan. Thank you, Whatever Fan.
Whatever fan
Appreciate it.
donated $100. I'm enjoying Jay Barbecue cooking her puppy cheeks better than Gordon Ramsay like a donkey.
Okay.
They like my cheeks. That's all I heard.
We have.
You got cooked, is what they said. I
They
know,
also
you
said
can't,
I'm
I know you
cute.
can't
They
hear
also said I'm
something.
cute.
Yeah.
There was a nice one that came through about you.
I saw.
All right, we have Grandma Sweaters coming in here in just a moment. Grandma's Sweaters, excuse me.
Grandma's Sweaters donated $100. Erudite that makes no sense. Feminism is a populist movement where each rep in history interprets the definition. Feminism hold ancient beliefs and utilize history as foundation for their beliefs.
Yep.
Okay. It's not a refutation of anything that I've said.
Right.
If you
But
guys
I
want
understand that you can't understand
if you want to
objective
engage with me,
argumentation, right.
I'm right here. But if you want to keep fighting like some
But you're
person
arguing in
girl,
yourself,
go
in your
for it.
head. It's like a hamster wheel running, and you're
I'm
not
not.
actually in the debate.
I've
That's why
defined
the whole
feminism
chat is.
times. I did a lot of
But
labor
did you hear
to
my?
define
I bet you
feminism.
couldn't restate my internal critique, could you?
Of me?
Yeah.
It was something about how you think that I'm like self-defeating because you think that my definitions necessarily like contradict each other, which they don't. It was just a false dichotomy.
No, that wasn't the internal critique, but good try.
Okay. Do you want to remind me?
Get more.
Yeah, we have Rachel Wilson. Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
$100. The most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is kill it. Margaret Sanger, founder of Planned Parenthood, first-wave feminist. Feminism is intrinsically anti-natalist.
Yep.
I just disagree.
Okay.
Good job.
Thank you, Rachel Wilson. Appreciate that.
It's almost like there's lots of camps to a large.
This is why, like, this is something I actually like about conservatives. Is conservatives always know what buttons to press to get people to get behind their beliefs. They selectively quote people in such a way to portray an idea as something really, really bad. They'll quote Margaret Sanger and ignore what, like, feminists today believe. Like, you'd be hard pressed to find a feminist who's like, yes, smother the infant, kill. What did Alex Jones say? What did he say, bro? Destroy the child, corrupt them all. Like, no, bro. Like, most feminists don't believe that. Like, you can quote whoever you want to quote. That's not necessarily indicative of an ideology in its modern form. It's a ridiculous statement. But conservatives, they actually, like, compel people by saying that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how they do it. Like, they find the perfect quote, and then someone who knows nothing about feminism, nothing about any of this, hears it and says, wow, feminism's horrible. We got to put a stop to it. And just like that, they score points. Whew. Conservatives. They might be stupid, but they're effective at getting people to believe bullshit.
Movement.
Like, so it's elastic, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, to some degree, yeah, we would agree that there's heterogeneity within any movement.
Right. So it can be defined the way you need it at whatever point in the debate,
I defined it really clearly, like
Very
really
broadly,
clearly.
so that you could move it later. And it
And
didn't
why'd
work.
you agree
I'm sorry
to
it didn't
it?
work.
Why'd you agree to it?
Because I was setting you up to lose later, that's why.
Oh, it was an AD chess plan,
Correct.
and then it took
And
you
you fell.
45 minutes to define it later.
No, I just let you dig your own hole after 45 minutes.
Whatever you need to tell yourself.
I bet you 95% of the chat's going to agree with me.
I'm
You wanna bet?
sure that this
Because
chat
everybody's
agrees
dumb.
with you.
Oh, really?
No,
So everybody in the chat's dumb. Thank you.
Oh, I didn't say that. I said I'm sure chatters agree with you. I just don't.
But you think that my arguments are dumb, so they're dumb.
I'm not super interested in what chatters have to say. Viewers are a very different
But
breed.
optics and who won the debate is judged by the audience.
Yeah, but the audience isn't just chatters, right? It's also viewers, and these are not the same person.
I bet the comments are going to say otherwise.
I'm sure the comments on a very right-leaning, decently Eastern Orthodox that has already accepted most of your presuppositions as a show
Right-leaning
are
or
going to agree with you.
right-leaning? What?
Right-leaning.
Right-leaning?
Yeah, I'm sure that they're going to agree with you, but that doesn't mean that you've won, right? Just like if I put this on my channel and then all my left-leaning audiences said I won, that's not evidence that I won, obviously.
Are you sure?
Yeah, obviously. That would be like a super
Because
selection bias.
debates are for audiences.
Sure. Did you listen to anything I just said? What's a selection bias?
Well, it's when you choose the evidence based on what you want.
That's not a selection bias. That's called.
Well, you're talking about audiences, and like my audience would like my stuff. So if they like me, then I think I won because my audience like me. So I selectively chose the audience. Is what you're saying?
No. Okay, no. So it's, you know what? Never.
Right.
You're wrong.
No, that's what it is.
It's crazy.
So
You don't know
basically,
what any of these words mean. You've really impressed people.
Like
Selection
how
bias
the word
in science.
objective just means
so
absolute
selection
in the
bias in
same
science
sense?
means that like a naturally arising population that you were testing might end up having some emergent trait that you think is a construct true of that group when actually you already set up a prerequisite methodology to find that trait within it. So my audience is going to like my shit more, and your audience will like your
That's
shit
literally
more.
what I just said.
Yeah, but the issue is that you were defining.
That's what I just said.
No, you said that.
That's what I just defined. You idiot.
No.
You're stupid. Like I literally just defined the same thing that you said.
Do you think that when you call me stupid, you win?
No, it's a fact.
What's the
No,
purpose
it's
behind it?
factually demonstrating what is the case.
Again, do you think that
Because
you're winning?
you
by calling
literally
me
give the same
stupid?
definition I did. I don't care.
No, the issue was that you were doing the what's it called when you?
Oh, I thought you knew the
evidence?
fallacies. I thought you knew the fallacies.
I do, just
Oh, but you
remember
don't.
the
But you don't.
term.
You don't. You didn't know what internal critique was either.
Do you remember what the
what?
word is for when you selectively you cherry pick your evidence? What's the word for that?
Well, there's two fallacies. There's the sharpshooter fallacy and the gambler's fallacy. So you might be referring to either of those.
No.
Just cherry picking fallacy?
It's not cherry picking fallacy. It's
She
like
doesn't
really
even know the
common.
fallacies.
I do.
No, you don't.
Yes.
So
That's crazy.
what's the gambler's fallacy? If you know the fallacy.
What's the fallacy?
What's the gambler's fallacy?
I don't know.
You just said you knew the fallacies.
I know lots of fallacies. That doesn't mean I know every
That's one of the most
fallacy.
popular ones. You don't know?
No.
Incomplete evidence? Fallacy of incomplete evidence?
No.
Suppressing evidence? Okay.
I can't think of the word. It starts with a C.
Sure. We have a few more chats coming through. Thank you, Christopher. Appreciate
Christopher
it.
Scott donated $100.
Thank you.
Absolutism is a form of objectivism. They are intrinsically intertwined, not so bright.
Oh, you thought words only had one
$100
meaning.
donor said it,
You
so it
thought
must
words
be
only had one
true.
meaning. I'm sorry. Sometimes they can mean two different things. It's called a word concept fallacy. Did you know about that one or no?
I should write that one
You
down.
should
so that
actually.
when later you get mad at me for using
Right.
the word
So
for two
Texas
different
sharpshooter, go look it up.
things.
Word concept fallacy, look that up.
Can mean
Gambler's fallacy, go look that up.
two
And internal critique.
Thank you, John. By the way, guys, we did set a super chat goal. We're at 13 of 50. We have about 15 minutes left on it. Kyla will wear a
If you
MAGA hat.
give me part of that.
I will give you a $2 bill.
If I'm the reward for it, I'm getting some of that money. But I'll definitely wear a hat.
We'll talk about this.
Yeah.
We've got to see if we hit the goal, but
We can
it's
hit the goal,
happening.
guys. We
50
can
minutes.
definitely
50
hit
minutes. Let's see here. We're all caught up.
We should give $100 to whichever chatter can figure out why Jay doesn't understand what a false analogy is and was incorrect in the use of it.
I know what a false analogy is.
That's true, but then why do you use it incorrectly?
I didn't.
You did. So either you're
Comparing the
lying
nation
right
state
now
of
or living
Israel,
that faith.
comparing the nation state of Israel to the history of feminism is a false analogy.
What was I comparing?
You asked for a definition that was not connected to history, and then by the way, you said that history is bound up with a definition.
So I asked you if you could define Israel. If you could define
You said,
Israel
can I do it without going
centuries.
through the
And you said,
history?
yeah, I could.
No,
You
I
said,
didn't.
Yes,
I said
you could define Israel.
No, I didn't. I said I have to.
history.
Now
And
you're
the reason why
lying.
you said it's disanalogous is you said Israel has too long of a
No, you
history.
just yapped and didn't listen.
Okay.
But
You were
I said you
saying a
can't.
lot.
I said you can't define Israel without going into the ancient history.
You said that I don't want to and that it's
You got-
disanalogous because Israel
I
has
said
long
you
history and
can't.
feminism has short history.
That would contradict what you just said.
Explicitly what you said.
That would contradict what you just said like 2 minutes ago.
That doesn't matter. I was
It
typing.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So contradictions don't matter in a debate. So
Your
thank you.
contradictions matter, yes.
Oh my gosh, you just admitted that you contradicted, and now you're saying that I'm.
No, I did not.
Bro, what the Hey, bro, we gonna fast forward to something that makes some semblance of sense. This is like this discussion that they have about the Roman Empire is where like I was like, you know what, bro? Red pill niggas gotta be stopped.
Technology changes at a global level.
What
For
if
you to
it was-
compete at a global level, you have to allow.
Finish. Go ahead.
Okay, for example, if you don't update to technology, your society tends to fall behind.
None of this is
So
relevant.
technologies that made
Let her finish.
technologies that make feminism necessary and unavoidable would be things like tampons and things like birth control. This is absolutely true, and they're never going back in the hole. We're never putting the Colgate back in the fucking tube, right?
wow.
So Poland is a great example of a country that didn't update its technology, and as a result, it got stomped. When the beginning of, I believe, World War I or World War II, they invested in cavalry because the Polish cavalry was like the greatest thing. The Winged Hussars, everyone loved them, but tanks became a thing, and they got absolutely, utterly dumpstered and destroyed. Which is why, for societies to compete at a global geopolitical level, you have to keep up with technology. The reality is that China wants to win over America, which means they're going to allow women into the workforce. They're going to give them
She just wants
tampons.
to yap
They're going to give them
about
birth. You have to.
None of that
have
proves that it's
statements.
necessary and inevitable.
It proves that it's necessary and inevitable because the technology changes at a global level. If you compete at a global level, you have to allow women into the workforce.
So she just yaps. This is like her whole thing is to just yap. If it didn't happen in Rome, then it wasn't necessary and inevitable, and that proves my point.
Do we live in Rome anymore?
Oh my gosh, are you serious? You're that
Do we?
stupid.
Do we live in Rome anymore? Or the
You
technology
said
is still
necessary
living?
and inevitable?
Yes.
Was it necessary and inevitable in Rome?
Again, the techno. Or do we live in Rome? Do we live
So
in
then
Rome?
it wasn't necessary and inevitable.
Are the technologies
Can you
the
follow
same?
an argument that isn't
I
just
can.
yapping and asserting a position?
Jay, can
Okay. one could argue that certain technologies aren't inevitable because humans spend thousands of years in a very static state of technological development. But bro, to say that it's not necessary is bullshit. Like, just because something didn't exist in ancient times doesn't mean it's not necessary. Like, in medieval times, peasants couldn't read or write. But people knowing how to read and write in modern day is so important. It's incredibly important. Like, bro, like, you know what I mean? Like, bro, like, you, nigga, like, for lack of a better word, but like, just because something didn't exist in that particular period of time does not mean that it's not necessary. Yeah, like modern medicine. I mean, like, so many things back then were not a thing, but it doesn't mean it's not necessary. How many, like, civil liberties and right? Because think about this, right? The peasantry knowing how to read and write was not necessary in Rome. So how about we just disenfranchise the majority of the population from being literate? It wasn't necessary in Rome, so it's not necessary now. I mean, at one point in ancient Rome, they didn't even wear pants. They didn't have pants. I mean, they had clothing that covered their, you know, their nether regions, but they didn't wear pants. Right? It wasn't necessary. So why do it? Why do it? Why, like that's just ridiculous. Like, just because something wasn't like a thing back then doesn't mean it's not necessary. And obviously, something being necessary isn't necessarily indicative of whether or not we want to keep it. Like, it's not necessary to live in a modern house, but you probably want to live in a home with modern appliances and amenities rather than living in a fucking, like, you know, mud hut. You could live in the mud hut. Humans lived like that for thousands of years. But it might not be the most efficient way of living. You know what I mean? Like, and this is like, this comes to like a philosophical, like, this is the philosophy of red pillars and right wingers is, it didn't exist back then, so we don't need it. Well, it's like, okay, well, at one point, black people weren't considered equal citizens. At one point, blacks were considered property. Do we just go back to that? At one point, most white men weren't considered equal to the elite, to the nobility. So do we just go back to that? Where do we draw the line? Because I think what a lot of like red pillars don't understand, like black red pillars don't understand. These white men in the red pill movement are standing behind you with a sword ready to take you down. The white men in the red pill movement don't understand. The rich billionaires like Elon Musk and Donald Trump and company are standing right behind you with a sword in their hand. Like, this is all one big like movement meant to curtail the rights of the peasantry, meant to curtail the rights of the common man and to reinstate a sort of feudal, sort of, you know, aristocratic structure of society with a monarchy at the helm. That's effectively what it is that they want. You know, yeah, clean drinking water wasn't a guarantee. You know, I mean, the littlest of shit could kill you. You could break a limb and that was the end. If you broke a limb and it was a clear, clean break through the skin, what do they call it? A compound fracture, where it just breaks through. That was it for your ass. That was it. That was the end. The one no coming back from that. It was over with for your motherfucking ass. Like, that was it. That didn't exist back then. I mean, we can go on and on and on and on, but the reason why these red pillars speak this way is because that's their logic for why we don't need women's rights. Well, back then, you know, women didn't really have, you know, equal rights, and the Romans didn't need that back then. So, you know, it doesn't really matter. You know, I mean, it's just, you know, it's just not necessary. It's like none of you actually want to live like the Romans at all. You might want to enjoy an all-white city. I mean, I'm sure Rome had some people of other races. You know, it was a you know, a Mediterranean hub of commerce and you know, shit like that. But you know, you might want some of the more ancient, you know, conservative social aspects, but you don't want to actually live like the Romans. You don't actually want to go through what they went through. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not built for that shit. And that's the core of, like, I don't think conservatives realize for every single one of you who wants to get rid of women's rights, there's like 5 of you that want to get rid of like minority rights. For every like 5 of you that wants to get rid of like minority rights, okay, it's probably not 10 that want to get rid of everyone's rights, but it's a small amount of people with a significant amount of wealth and power who currently are being propelled to power by the conservative movement. And something has to be said about the fact that, like, I'm about to sound like Alex Jones in this motherfucker, but real talk, there is a conservative conspiracy propelled by the wealthiest among them to take Western civilization back to a sort of hyper-racialized, patriarchal, aristocratic monarchy. Everyone can clearly see it. This Curtis Yarvin bullshit, this Elon Musk fuckery, this goddamn JD Vance buffoonery, all of this, it's a conspiracy. It's a conspiracy, and it reaches far beyond the likes of which we can possibly comprehend. This is a conspiracy, and the masses, as in conservatives, we're not the masses, we're smart, we're liberals, we're important, we matter. That was a joke. But the masses are being used to instate this sort of time machine process of just undoing everything we've managed to gain in the last like 400 years. The Heritage Foundation, all of that. It's a conspiracy. And they're all in this together on some High School Musical shit. And bro, like, there's something to be said about the fact that this is a conspiracy. And no one wins in a conspiracy. It's not even a conspiracy where white men win, because white men, part of the reason why white men got to enjoy being equal or some kind of like, egalitarian, enjoy some kind of like egalitarian system, or really just social mobility. Social mobility was a civil right that white men didn't have for the majority of European history. If you were a peasant, your punk ass was a peasant. That was it for your ass. There was no social mobility for you, right? I mean, like, this can go, like, and we know that this can happen because conservatives are obsessed with making education as expensive as humanly possible. We've seen Ron DeSantis and company in Florida trying to pass, legislation that would basically put children who are supposed to be in high school, the 9th grade, in work at night. How the fuck is a kid gonna like finish their education when they're spending 8 hours in school and like 6 hours at work? Make that math add up. But they want to bring back this sort of, feudal-like era of dukes and kings and counts and barons and lords, and it's psychotic, bro. These niggas are high on their own supply. These niggas drugged out. They're drugged out, bro. Like, they're coked out. Like, somebody has to say it, okay? It's about time we started talking about conservatives the way they talk about us. It's about time we started just screaming and yelling about conspiracy theories and having like big stacks of paper about bullshit and slapping it on the table. Maybe name our show Knowledge Fight or, Information Combat. I'm just kidding. But bro, like, at some point we do need to start talking a little bit more spicy about these people, because it's what they deserve. It's what they deserve, my nigga. You know what I'm saying? Somebody's got to say it. Somebody needs to just, somebody needs to speak the facts at some point, bro. You know what I'm saying? But let's keep.
Can you
It's an
follow
argument.
me?
What's the argument?
It was not necessary, no, because they didn't have tampons.
Then it wasn't
in the
necessarily
original.
inevitable. Thank you.
It is inevitable because we now
Then
have
it's not
tampons.
necessary. You just said it's not necessary.
Do tampons exist?
That refutes your position.
Do tampons exist?
No.
Do they exist in
No,
Rome?
they don't exist.
Do they exist in Rome?
There are no tampons.
There's no such thing as
No.
tampons. Okay, great. If the tampons,
no such thing.
did they exist in Rome?
This nigga thinks that's funny. There are no tampons. I'm about done with this. Yo, I ain't gonna lie. This isn't even a debate anymore. We're done with this shit, my nigga. My nigga, we out. You know what I'm saying? What's that LeBron meme where he grabs a bag and leaves? We're out, bro. Nice debate. You know what I'm saying? Like, you feel me? Like, we had our little moment, but that's it, my nigga. We done. You know what I'm saying? Like we just about done with that. Oh, they're live right now on the Whatever podcast. That's interesting. How interesting. Never would have made it without you. They got bops on there. They got the bopperonis on there. Hold up. So Kodachrome with the $10 super chat. What's crazy about it is that the idea of wealth hoarding and racism is irrational at the core. There's no benefit in consolidating power if eventually everyone loses their freedom and material wealth. That's true, but I think most people look at it from the lens of like, it won't happen to me, it'll just happen to them. And that explains part of the reason why like we've gotten to this point. Is because a lot of people really do believe like it won't be me, it'll be the peasants. It'll be the filthy peasants who will, you know, bear the brunt of whatever ends up happening, and it would never happen to someone like me. I'm moral, I'm just, I'm righteous, I'm amazing, and things like that are for the blacks. You know, if we're being honest, you know what I mean? You know, that's how they think. In their mind, stuff like that is for the blacks. It's for the filthy undesirables. The problem is they don't seem to understand this kind of stuff affects everybody. It just does. You know, it just does. You know? Let's see another debate. Biggie, 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 can't you see? Sometimes your words just hypnotize me. And I just love your flashy ways. I guess it's why they're broken, you're so paid. Biggie, 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 can't you see? Sometimes your words just hypnotize me. And I just love your flashy ways. I guess it's why they're broken, you're so paid. Let me stop before they goddamn copyright this motherfucking stream. Because they gonna get a nigga up out of here singing that bullshit. What did you say, boy? I'm just kidding. Shit. Let's see. Yeah, conservatives are like, they're hyper fixated on like a past that just doesn't exist.
Like, right? And so I think when you're posing this question, the OnlyFans option has a lot of potential acute short-term gain, a fuckload of money, obviously. But the important question is, will your future... obviously has more power than like an E5 soldier.
Can I make up any money? Can I make up money? Can I just make it up? Is it legal?
I mean,
let's see.
For the government, yeah, kind of.
No, not for the government. Can I, as an individual in a society, just make up money? Okay. And if I do that, what happens?
You would go to jail.
And how do I go to jail mechanically?
The police will arrest you.
And are they strong men?
Often, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, not all the time. There are very capable
They're lowering
female
the
police
they're
officers.
not as capable, but they're lowering the standards.
I just don't know if this has to do with, can women own private property? Like, I understand
Yes,
that for
they can.
you,
We already answered that.
Well, hold on. I understand that for you, like, going back to the enforcement arm dialogue tree is, like, your strongest position. But I'm actually trying to flesh out your ideas about other things, because I'm genuinely
I understand, but you got to understand, when we said, yeah, you can own land, you can own stuff, you can participate in the society and the economics, right? You said, you basically said, so you agree with feminism? No, I'm saying that very clearly that any expression of feminism that you present is actually wholly reliant on something that's not feminist.
Sure, that just doesn't
Sure,
invalidate
that's all I
the
needed to hear.
feminists. Yeah, but that doesn't invalidate
feminist.
suffragettes.
Yeah, okay.
So are you saying that the suffragettes didn't get women's ability to acquire land?
Men did that for them too.
The suffragettes had nothing to do with it.
No, that's just influence. I'm not denying people have influence on things. Ultimately, what you're asking is the strong person to say it so. Right?
So
that's
you
what a
agree-
protest is, right?
That's fair, but you agree with that, at least that suffragette point.
Yeah, it's an
that women
appeal
should own land.
to the enforcement arm.
As a strong man, you're okay with women owning land, and you would protect that right.
Yeah, if women own land, if my wife owns some.
Hold on. One sec, guys. Okay. Go to sources, hit the I in StreamYard. Okay, hold on. Continue the conversation.
Yeah, I would say even myself, if my wife owned land, or we co-own land, or she already had land or something like this, what I'm pointing to is that ultimately the ownership of that, we're both gonna rely on an enforcement arm. That's not gonna be feminist.
Yeah, sure, that just has nothing to do with what I was asking you. But I understand, like, you want to go back to the enforcement arm, you really like that argument.
But what's the further logical line that you're asking when you
All I'm
ask about
asking
property?
you is if you think women should have the right to own land. That's all I'm
Because you
asking.
thought that would back up feminism, right?
Nope, because
You
I'm
did.
genuinely curious if you guys think women should own land.
Do you think that women should be able to open a credit card in their name?
I think that was a bad idea. I think that would have happened in 1970.
Roughly.
Yeah, I think the consequences of that being that women now hold 75% of consumer debt, and I don't think debt is pretty good for people. I don't think it's a thing that they should be okay with. I think people should generally work against debt, whether they're a man or a woman. Maybe lower their debt. I think the burden of debt adds to some stress. I think it could actually add to some instability and things like that.
So, and let's say hypothetically, women weren't allowed to get a credit card.
Most of history.
No, for sure. I'm just saying that, well, credit's relatively new, but that's a whole different conversation that we can be having. You're basically saying that, I'm trying to think, sorry, I'm trying to like phrase the words.
It's just debt. How is credit?
No, it's what if a woman, like, in her own time, like, this isn't like a requirement that it should be so. I'm saying on her own time, she did her research and she got a financial literacy class. You're basically saying, well, you can't have it anyway, even if you're more financially literate than other men, or than men, because you're a woman, is basically where you're going at. Because what if she is financially literate? Because you're making a broad statement saying women shouldn't have it because they're not financially literate. What if they are?
So once again, this is like the third time you've argued that the exception should make the rule.
This would really be an exception.
Well,
because
based on
it's
what
like
statistics-
Her exception was a woman who went and studied and
It's
got
not
a
an
degree.
exception though, right? It's
Women
reasonable
who
to
study
presume-
economics
She's
better
asking-
than men is an
She's
exception.
asking a line of credulity.
It's an exception.
She's asking
Her
a-
example is an exception.
It is, just accept it.
It's not an exception.
You are.
It's, okay, I
You know
can
what an
answer.
exception is?
I do.
You know what it is?
Do you want me to
How
answer
many
you?
women going
Jay,
to
if you want
economics
to talk to me,
degrees?
you have to
How
allow me
many
to
women
talk.
get-
You're just going to interrupt
Nobody
me.
up here.
I've already talked about you. I know you think this
We're
is
over
a slick
here.
dunk.
Hey, we're over here.
I often look up when I think. That's fine.
Apparently,
So, do you want me to answer you?
Is that an exception?
It's not an exception.
Why?
Because it's completely normative to assume that multiple women can go and get financial
Most.
literacy.
Well, you know, if you're wanting her to stare you in the eyes while arguing, why don't you take your shades off?
Because I'm so much on drugs right now.
Fair.
Gosh.
Okay, then.
In fairness, he has eye floaters. I will give him that point. He's got like eye floaters. Although it would be better if you took them off,
Why?
so that
You can stare
there's no
into-
glare, so that people know where you're looking.
Look at the
Dazzling, dazzling.
You wanna look at
You've
the
got
abyss?
incredible blue eyes. Yeah, that's what I want to do.
Isn't an exception something that's paired up against?
I don't, bro. These red pill niggas annoy me, bro. It's like the obsession of like, can you guys just stop having rights, please? Thank you. It's crazy. Crazy work. Donald Trump, Qatar. Trump plans to accept a gift from Qatar. if Trump was black, this would have ended a long time ago. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's gonna be accepting the jet. He thinks he's Drake. He's gonna be accepting a personal blue jet from a billionaire. So okay, there's just no end in sight. I mean, Israel has to be. I ain't gonna lie. Israel got to be sick right now. I ain't gonna lie, they might be wishing Harris actually won. I'm to be honest, they were kind of screwed either way because Trump is an unpredictable individual who will do anything. Harris was kind of already taking a stance against them. Trump was slurping and burping and all of that, and now look, 3 months in, he's taking bribes from their enemies. Man, oh man. Eating air money. Hey, that's crazy. That was a classic. Yo, that shit was a classic. Y'all remember Yusuf Tazim from GTA? Yo, funniest GTA character hands down. Okay. Hands down the funniest character. Da 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 da. You can air. Da na 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 na. Oh man, let's see. Let's see if there's anything else interesting we can watch. For those of you curious, the stream will stay up. It will stay up, don't worry. I ain't gonna lie. Look at that. I got the wings behind me. I got like the little, got the little Renaissance look. Got the wings behind me. Whew. I don't know what else to talk about. I don't know what else to discuss. Let's see. Let's see. All right. Look. Yeah. What we'll do for now is we'll just chill out for now. I'll leave the stream up. It's a surprise stream anyways, so, you know. It is what it is, but I'll leave the stream up. And yeah, so that'll be the stream for today. And then tomorrow, content. And yeah. So yup. All right, ninjas. Salute.